My stepdaughter looked me dead in the eye across the white tablecloth of the most expensive restaurant in Atlanta and laughed. She pointed a manicured finger at my face and said, "You are just a walking wallet, Gus. Do not try to be my father because my real father had more class in his pinky finger than you have in your entire bank account." I turned to my wife, the woman I had supported for 5 years, expecting her to defend me. Instead, she placed a hand on her daughter's arm and chuckled. She said, "Oh, Tiana, leave him alone. He is old and confused. He forgets his place. Just take the money and ignore him. Don't correct him. It is not worth the energy." I sat there. I did not scream. I did not flip the table. I just smiled, sipped my water, and realized that my marriage was over. The next morning, I initiated Protocol Zero. By noon, they had lost the cars, the tuition, the house, and every dime of access to my fortune. But before I tell you how I destroyed their world in 24 hours, please, like this video and comment down below with the city you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. My name is Augustus King, but everyone who matters calls me Gus. I am 72 years old. When people look at me now, they see a slow-moving African-American man with gray hair and a cane. They see a retiree who likes to sit on his porch. They do not see the man who built King Logistics from a single rusted delivery truck in 1980 into a freight empire that moves cargo across 3 continents. They do not see the ruthless negotiator who survived corporate raids and union wars. They just see an old man. And that is exactly the mistake my wife Vanessa and her daughter Tiana made. They mistook my kindness for weakness and my silence for stupidity. It was Saturday night. The occasion was Tiana's 26th birthday. She had demanded we celebrate at the Gilded Lily, a place where a steak costs more than my first car and the waiters look at you like they are doing you a favor by serving you water. I paid for the reservation, of course. I always paid. I sat at the head of the table dressed in my best Sunday suit. To my right sat Vanessa, beautiful, 50 years old, and wearing a diamond necklace I had bought her for our anniversary. To my left sat Tiana and her husband Hunter. Hunter is 28. He is white, works in finance, or at least he says he does. I have never actually seen him go to an office. He has that way of looking at me, a smile that does not reach his eyes, a tone that is always a little too loud, like he thinks I am deaf or slow because of my age, or maybe because of my skin color. He calls it joking. I call it disrespect. The waiter cleared the appetizers. We had eaten caviar and lobster tails. Tiana had ordered champagne that cost $500 a bottle. She was glowing, basking in the attention. She loved being the center of the world. Then it was time for gifts. Hunter handed her a small box. It was a pair of earrings, diamond studs, small, tasteful. Tiana squealed and kissed him. "Oh, baby," she said, "these are perfect. You spoil me." I knew for a fact that Hunter was broke. I knew this because I paid the rent on their luxury apartment in Buckhead. I knew this because I paid the lease on Tiana's Range Rover. I knew this because every time they went over their credit limit, Vanessa would come to me with big, sad eyes, talking about how hard it is for young people these days, and I would cover the debt. So in reality, I had bought those earrings too, but I said nothing. I clapped my hands. I smiled. Then it was my turn. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a heavy, leather-bound envelope. I had spent weeks thinking about this gift. Tiana was finishing her MBA. She was always talking about starting her own fashion brand. I wanted to give her security. I wanted to give her a foundation. Inside that envelope was a custodial savings bond and a trust deed worth $50,000, mature and ready to be cashed or invested. It was real wealth. It was seed money. I slid the envelope across the table. "Happy birthday, Tiana," I said. "I am proud of how hard you are working in school. This is for your future." Tiana grabbed the envelope. Her eyes lit up. She ripped it open, probably expecting a check or the keys to a vacation home. She pulled out the documents. She stared at them. Her smile vanished. She flipped the papers over, looking for something else. "What is this?" she asked. Her voice was flat. "It is a savings bond and a deed," I explained. "It is $50,000. You can use it to start your business or buy property. It is an investment." Hunter leaned over her shoulder. He laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Wow, Gus," he said, shaking his head. "A savings bond. What is this, 1950? Nobody does bonds anymore. You really are showing your age, man. You got her paper?" She wanted the Birkin bag. We dropped hints for weeks. I looked at Hunter. I kept my voice calm. "A bag depreciates the moment you take it out of the store. Hunter, this money grows. This is how you build wealth. Tiana threw the envelope onto the table. It slid across the linen and hit my water glass with a dull thud. I do not want wealth in 20 years, Gus, she snapped. I wanted the bag. All my friends are getting the bag. I look stupid. You make me look stupid. The restaurant went quiet around us. People at nearby tables turned to look. I felt the heat rise in my neck. Tiana, I said, my voice dropping an octave. That is $50,000. That is more money than most people see in a year. You will show some gratitude. She laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. Gratitude for what? For doing your job. You married my mom. That comes with a price tag, Gus. You are the provider. That is your only role. Do not sit there and try to lecture me on business. You drove trucks. You got lucky. You are just a wallet to us. I froze. The insult hung in the air like smoke. I looked at Hunter. He was smirking, taking a sip of his wine, enjoying the show. He looked at me with that arrogance of a man who has never had to fight for a meal in his life. Tiana continued, emboldened by my silence. Stop trying to be my dad, Gus. You are not my father. My real dad was cool. He was charming. He knew how to treat a lady. He had class. You are just old. You are boring. And honestly, you are embarrassing to be seen with. Her real father was a man currently serving 15 years in a state penitentiary for fraud, a man who had left Vanessa with a mountain of debt and a broken heart 10 years ago, a man I had never spoken ill of out of respect for Tiana. I slowly turned my head to the right. I looked at Vanessa. Vanessa, my wife, the woman I had taken on cruises around the world, the woman whose mother's medical bills I paid in full, the woman who slept in my bed every night. I waited for her to speak. I waited for her to slap her daughter. I waited for her to defend her husband. Vanessa took a sip of her champagne. She set the glass down. She patted Tiana's hand gently. Okay, baby, calm down, Vanessa said. Her voice was soothing, but not to me. Don't get wrinkles over it. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were cold, dead cold. Gus, honey, why do you always have to make things difficult? You know what she wanted. Why do you have to be so stubborn? You ruined her night. Vanessa, I said, my voice barely a whisper. She just insulted me. She just called me a wallet. Vanessa rolled her eyes. She leaned in close, lowering her voice so the table next to us couldn't hear, but loud enough for Hunter and Tiana. Oh, stop being so dramatic, Gus. She is young. She is spirited. And let's be honest, you are old. You get confused. You don't understand how these things work anymore. Just let it go. She is not your daughter, so stop trying to parent her. Don't correct her. It is embarrassing when you try to act like the patriarch. Just pay the bill, and let's go home. Something inside me clicked. It was a physical sensation, like a heavy steel door slamming shut in the deepest part of my mind. It was the sound of the vault closing. For 5 years I had ignored the little signs, the way they ordered for me, the way they spent my money without asking, the way they stopped inviting me to family events until the bill arrived. I had told myself it was just a phase. I told myself they were adjusting. I told myself I was buying love because I was lonely. But looking at Vanessa's face, seeing the contempt in her eyes, I realized the truth. They did not love me. They did not even like me. They tolerated me. I was a resource. I was a gold mine. They were slowly stripping bare. I looked at Hunter. He was checking his watch, bored. I looked at Tiana. She was texting on her phone, probably complaining to her friends about the terrible gift. I looked at Vanessa. She was signaling the waiter for the dessert menu. I took a deep breath. The anger that had flared up a moment ago vanished. It was replaced by a cold, icy clarity. I felt calm. The kind of calm I used to feel before walking into a meeting to dismantle a rival company. I smiled. You are right, Vanessa, I said. My voice was steady. I am old. I am confused. I should not try to parent a grown woman. Vanessa smiled back, relieved. She patted my cheek. A gesture you would use on a dog. Thank you, Gus. I knew you would understand. Now let's order the chocolate souffle. I raised my hand. The waiter hurried over. Check, please, I said. All ready, Vanessa asked. But we haven't had dessert. I am tired, I said. I pulled out my wallet. I slipped out the black Centurion card. The heavy metal clinked against the table. Hunter's eyes went to the card immediately. He licked his lips. He loved that card. He loved knowing he was associated with that card. I handed it to the waiter. "Add a 20% tip," I said. The waiter bowed and ran off. I stood up. My knees popped, but I stood tall. I buttoned my jacket. I picked up my cane. "Where are you going?" Tiana asked, looking up from her phone. "You are leaving." "I am," I said. I looked down at them. The three of them sitting there in their designer clothes, their bellies full of lobster, their hearts full of greed. "Happy birthday, Tiana," I said. "Enjoy the wine." I turned my back on them. "Gus," Vanessa called out. Her voice was sharp. "You can't just walk away. We took one car. How are we supposed to get home?" "Use Uber," I said without turning around. "Or maybe Hunter can pay for a limo with his finance salary." I walked out of the restaurant. The maitre d' opened the door for me. The humid Atlanta air hit my face. It felt like freedom. My driver Thomas was waiting with the Rolls-Royce Phantom at the curb. Thomas has been with me for 30 years. He knows where the bodies are buried. He saw my face and opened the back door immediately. "Home, Sir Thomas asked." "No, Thomas," I said, sliding into the leather seat. "Drive. Just drive for a while." I pulled out my phone. It was 9:30 p.m. on a Saturday. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. Harrison Wolfe, my personal attorney, my fixer, the man who wrote the ironclad prenuptial agreement that Vanessa had signed 5 years ago without reading because she was too busy picking out wedding flowers. I pressed call. He answered on the second ring. "Gus, is everything all right?" Harrison asked. "No, Harrison," I said. I looked out the window as the city lights blurred by. "I am initiating Protocol 0. There was a pause on the line. Harrison knew what that meant. We had drafted it years ago as a doomsday scenario. It was the nuclear option. It meant total severance, total liquidation of liabilities. "Are you sure?" Gus Harrison asked softly. "There is no going back from this. It will be scorched earth." I thought about Tiana's laugh. I thought about Hunter's smirk. I thought about Vanessa patting my cheek like I was a senile fool. I am sure I said, "I want it all gone, Harrison. The cars, the tuition, the allowances, the access. Cancel the cards. Freeze the joint accounts. Contact the university. Contact the leasing agents. I want them to wake up tomorrow morning with nothing but the clothes on their backs." "Consider it done," Harrison said. "I will start the paperwork tonight. By sunrise, their world will be different." "Thank you, Harrison." I hung up the phone. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. The car hummed beneath me. They thought I was a wallet. They thought I was a stepping stone. Tomorrow they were going to learn that I was the entire mountain and I was about to cause an avalanche. I tapped the partition glass. "Thomas." "Yes, sir. Take me home. I need to get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a very busy day." As the car pulled away from the curb, I saw them exiting the restaurant. They were standing on the sidewalk looking at their phones, looking confused. Vanessa was waving her arm, looking for the car that wasn't there. I did not wave. I just watched them disappear in the rearview mirror. The lesson had begun. 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday in Atlanta is usually a time for peace. The humidity has not yet risen to choke the air, and the only sound you might hear is the distant hum of the highway or the song of a cardinal in the magnolia trees. I sat in my favorite wingback chair in the corner of my bedroom, a cup of black coffee in my hand. It was Colombian strong and bitter just the way I liked it. I did not add sugar. I had enough sugar into my life for 5 years, and it had only rotted my teeth. I was fully dressed. I wore my charcoal slacks, a crisp white button-down shirt, and my house shoes. I was not a man who lounged in pajamas. My father, a sharecropper who became a deacon, taught me that a man greets the day ready to work even if that work is simply teaching a lesson. Down the hall, I heard the first signs of life. It was Tiana. She was awake early, likely because she had a spa appointment at 8:30. She never missed an appointment that involved someone else rubbing her feet or painting her nails, especially when I was footing the bill. I heard her door slam. I heard the heavy thud of her designer heels on the hardwood floor. She was moving with purpose, probably already texting her friends about the terrible dinner the night before, complaining about the cheap stepfather who gave her paper instead of leather. I took a slow sip of coffee and checked my watch. 7:10. The tow truck should be arriving right about now. I walked to the window and parted the heavy velvet curtains just an inch. My driveway is long, winding up from the street through a grove of oaks. At the bottom, blocking the exit, was a flatbed truck. It was massive, black, and loud. Two men in jumpsuits were already hooking chains to the white Range Rover Sport that sat parked near the fountain. That car cost $90,000. I had paid for it in cash 2 years ago because Tiana said she needed a safe vehicle for school. I had never seen her drive it to a library, but I had seen it parked in front of plenty of nightclubs. I watched as Tiana burst out of the front door. She was wearing a silk robe that cost more than my first week's paycheck at the trucking company. She had a phone pressed to her ear and a coffee tumbler in her hand. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw the men. I could not hear her words through the double-paned glass, but I knew the body language. She dropped the tumbler. Coffee splashed across the limestone steps. She ran toward the truck, waving her arms like a woman possessed. She was screaming. I could see her mouth contorting her face, turning that ugly shade of red that only appears when a spoiled child is told no for the first time. She grabbed the arm of the driver, a burly man who looked like he had moved more heavy machinery than Tiana had moved brain cells. She was pointing at the house, then at the car, then at her phone. She was likely threatening to call the police. She thought she was being robbed. In her mind, that car belonged to her. It was her birthright. She did not understand that in the real world, ownership is determined by whose name is on the title, not whose purse is in the passenger seat. The driver paused. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a clipboard. He held it up for her to see. Tiana snatched it from him. She read it. She froze. She looked up at the house, her eyes scanning the windows. For a second, I thought she might see me, but I remained in the shadows. She threw the clipboard onto the ground and ran back toward the house. She was not running to me. She was running to her mother. I went back to my chair and sat down. I picked up my coffee. It was still hot. 3 minutes later, my bedroom door flew open. It did not just open. It slammed against the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. Vanessa stood there. She had clearly just woken up. Her hair was wrapped in a silk scarf and she was wearing a matching sleeping gown. Her chest was heaving. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of confusion and fury that I had never seen directed at me before. Usually she looked at me with boredom or mild irritation. Today she looked at me like I was a monster. "Gus," she screamed. Her voice was shrill, piercing the quiet morning air. "What in the name of God is going on outside? There are men stealing Tiana's car. She says they have paperwork with your name on it. Tell me this is a mistake. Tell me you did not do something this petty." I did not look up immediately. I took another sip of coffee. I let the silence stretch out, filling the room, making her wait. I wanted her to feel the weight of my calm against her chaos. "It is not a mistake, Vanessa," I said, finally setting the cup down on the saucer with a gentle clink. "And it is not stealing. You cannot steal what you already own." Vanessa marched into the room. She stood over me, her hands on her hips. "You own it," she spat. "You gave that car to her, Gus. It was a gift. She needs it. She has appointments. She has to get to campus. How is she supposed to get around?" "She is a young woman. She cannot be walking on the side of the road. It is dangerous." I looked up at her then. I looked at the woman I had married 5 years ago. I remembered how she had told me she wanted a partner, someone to share her twilight years with. I remembered how she had cried when I paid off her mortgage so she wouldn't lose her childhood home. I realized now those tears were not gratitude. They were relief that she had found a sucker. "She needs transportation," I agreed. "Her legs seem to work fine. Or perhaps she can take the bus. There is a stop 2 miles down the road. I used to take the bus every day when I started my company. It builds character." Vanessa's mouth dropped open. She looked as if I had slapped her. "The bus," she whispered. "Are you insane? She is Tiana. She does not take the bus. She drives a Range Rover. Fix this, Gus. Call those men right now and tell them to put the car down. You are embarrassing us. The neighbors will see." The neighbors, I thought. The doctors, the lawyers, the professional athletes who lived on this street. They were the only jury Vanessa cared about. "I'm not calling anyone," I said. "The car is gone. It is being taken to a dealership to be sold. I am liquidating assets that no longer serve a purpose. That car was an expense. It yielded no return on investment." Vanessa stared at me. She blinked, trying to process what was happening. This was not the Gus she knew. The Gus she knew was a doormat. The Gus she knew apologized for taking up too much space. "You are doing this because of last night, aren't you?" she asked, her voice turning venomous. Because she hurt your fragile little feelings. My God, Gus, you are a 72-year-old man acting like a toddler. She made a joke. She had a little too much champagne, and now you are taking her car. That is abusive. That is financial abuse. Abuse, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. Abuse is watching a man work for 50 years until his back is bent and his hands are calloused, and then telling him he is nothing but a wallet. Abuse is letting your daughter spit in the face of the man who puts food on her table. I stood up. I used my cane for leverage, but once I was up, I did not need it. I towered over her. You want to talk about finances, Vanessa? Let's talk. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen and held it up so she could see. It was a notification from American Express. Card ending in 4098. Declined. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. What is that? She asked. That is Tiana's supplementary card, I said. She tried to use it 5 minutes ago to pay the tow truck driver to drop the car. It didn't work. And yours won't work either. I canceled them all this morning. The Visa, the MasterCard, the American Express. All of them. Vanessa stumbled back. She grabbed the edge of the dresser to steady herself. You canceled the cards, she gasped. But I have to go to the grocery store today. I have a hair appointment. Tiana needs to pay for her summer classes next week. How are we supposed to buy anything? I reached into my pocket again. I pulled out a money clip. I peeled off 5 $20 bills. I dropped them on the dresser. They fluttered down like leaves. There is $100, I said. That should cover groceries for a few days if you shop carefully. I suggest you buy rice and beans. They stretch further than filet mignon. As for the rest, you have a job, Vanessa. You work part-time at that gallery. Use your paycheck. My paycheck, she shrieked. My paycheck is for my personal things. It doesn't cover this house. It doesn't cover our lifestyle. Exactly, I said. It does not cover our lifestyle. It covers your lifestyle. My money covered our lifestyle. And as of this morning, my money is closed for business. Vanessa looked at the $100 on the dresser. She looked at me. Her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. You can't do this, she hissed. We are married. Half of what you have is mine. I will call a lawyer. I will take you for everything. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Call a lawyer, Vanessa, please. Call Harrison Wolf. He wrote the prenuptial agreement you signed 5 years ago. The one you didn't read because you were too busy planning the honeymoon in Bora Bora. It states clearly that what was mine before the marriage remains mine. The business, the investments, the house. It is all mine. You leave with what you came with, which, if memory serves, was a mountain of debt and a closet full of shoes. She went pale. She remembered now. She remembered the thick stack of papers she had waved away, trusting that she could manipulate me forever. She changed tactics instantly. The anger vanished, replaced by a sudden desperate softness. She took a step toward me. She reached out to touch my arm. Gus, honey, she cooed. Let's not fight. This is crazy. We are a family. Tiana is just a girl. She didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. We love you. Please don't do this. Don't humiliate us. Just bring the car back, turn the cards on, and we can forget this ever happened. I'll make you that pot roast you like tonight. I looked at her hand on my arm. Her nails were perfectly manicured, painted a soft pink. I calculated in my head how much that manicure had cost me. $60 plus tip. I thought about the last 5 years. I thought about the tuition I paid for Tiana's undergrad and now her master's, $200,000. I thought about the clothes, the vacations, the dental work. I thought about how I had welcomed them into my home, how I had tried to be a father and a husband. I had given them everything. I had asked for nothing but basic courtesy, and they couldn't even give me that. I stepped back, letting her hand fall from my arm. It is too late for pot roast, Vanessa, I said. I walked past her toward the door. Where are you going? She cried out, panic rising in her voice again. I am going to the golf club, I said. I am going to have a nice breakfast. I am going to sit in the sun. But what about us? She screamed. What are we supposed to do? I stopped at the door and looked back. I suggest you start looking for receipts, I said. You might be able to return some of those shoes for cash. I walked out of the room and closed the door. I could hear her screaming my name, throwing things, the sound of glass breaking. It didn't matter. The objects she was breaking belonged to me, but they were just things. I could replace things. I could not replace the 5 years I had wasted on people who saw me as nothing more than a bank draft. I walked down the hallway, my cane tapping a steady rhythm on the floor. I felt lighter. The heaviness in my chest was gone. Outside, the tow truck was just pulling away. The Range Rover was secured on the flatbed, bouncing slightly as the truck hit the end of the driveway. Tiana was sitting on the front steps, her head in her hands, sobbing. She wasn't crying because she was sorry. She was crying because she was inconvenienced. She looked up as I walked out. Her mascara was running down her cheeks. "You ruin everything," she screamed at me. "I hate you." I paused. I looked at the girl I had put through school. "You are not my daughter, Tiana," I said, repeating the words her mother had used the night before. "So I suppose it is not my job to make you happy anymore." I walked past her to my Rolls-Royce where Thomas was holding the door open. I got in. The door shut with a solid, reassuring thud, sealing out her cries, sealing out the drama, sealing out the noise. "Drive, Thomas," I said. As we pulled away, I didn't look back at the mansion. I didn't look back at the women on the steps. I looked forward. The sun was fully up now. It was going to be a beautiful day. And I had a feeling that by the time I finished my round of golf, their day was going to get a whole lot worse. Because the car and the credit cards, that was just the appetizer. The main course was yet to come. The silence in my study did not last long. I had just settled into my leather armchair, a glass of iced tea sweating on a coaster beside me, when my phone began to vibrate against the mahogany desk. It was not a call. It was a barrage of notifications. Emails from the university bursar, alerts from the bank confirming stopped payments, and then the inevitable phone call. The caller ID flashed Tiana's name. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. I wanted her to sit in the panic for a few extra seconds. I wanted her to feel the weight of the silence. When I finally answered, I did not even have to say hello. "You canceled the check," she screamed. Her voice was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "I am standing in the registrar's office, Gus. There is a line of people behind me. The administrator just told me my registration is suspended. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? They said the check for $40,000 was voided." $40,000, Gus. I have finals next week. They're going to kick me out of the MBA program. Fix this. Fix this. Right now. I took a sip of my tea. The ice clinked against the glass. "I am not fixing anything, Tiana," I said calmly. "I am simply balancing my books. I reviewed my investments this morning and I decided that pouring $40,000 into a degree for a woman who does not know the value of a dollar is a bad trade." "You said I was just a wallet." "Well, the wallet is closed. You cannot do this," she shrieked. "It is my education." "You promised I promised to support a daughter," I corrected her. "You made it very clear last night that you are not my daughter. You told me not to parent you, so I am stepping back. This is what independence feels like, Tiana. It feels like paying your own bills." She started to cry, then those angry, entitled tears of a child who has had a toy snatched away. "I will tell Mom," she sobbed. "Tell her I said. Maybe she can sell some of her shoes to cover your tuition, or maybe your husband, the financial genius, can write a check." I hung up the phone. I did not feel guilty. I had paid for her undergraduate degree. I had paid for her first master's program, the one she quit halfway through because it was too stressful. I had paid enough. An hour later, the front door of my house flew open. I heard the heavy, aggressive footsteps of a man trying to sound important. It was Hunter. He did not knock. He did not ring the bell. He barged into my home like he owned the deed. I stayed in my chair. I did not rise to greet him. I turned the page of the newspaper I was reading. He stormed into my study. His face was flushed red, a vein pulsing in his forehead. He was wearing a suit that was too tight in the shoulders, trying to look like a Wall Street shark, but looking more like a desperate salesman. He was carrying a leather briefcase, one I had bought him for Christmas last year. He slammed it down onto my desk. Papers fluttered. My coaster jumped. "Listen to me, old man," Hunter snarled. He leaned over the desk, invading my personal space. "You have crossed a line. You think you can just pull the rug out from under us because your feelings got hurt? You are playing with people's lives. Tiana is hysterical. Do you know what kind of stress you are causing her?" I folded my newspaper slowly. I placed it on the side table. I looked up at him over the rim of my reading glasses. "I assume you are here to pay me back for the briefcase you just threw," I said. "Or are you here to ask for a loan?" "I am here to tell you how the law works," Hunter spat. He pointed a finger at me. You promised to pay for her school. You promised to pay for the car. In the eyes of the law, that is a verbal contract. We have relied on that promise. It is called detrimental reliance. I work in finance, Gus. I know the law. You cannot just cut off support for dependents. That is economic abuse. You are abusing an elderly position of power to control us. I stared at him. I tried not to laugh, but a low chuckle escaped my chest. It rumbled in my throat. Economic abuse, I repeated. Yes, he said, straightening his tie, thinking he had won a point. You are using money to manipulate us. It is illegal. And if you do not wire that tuition money by noon and return the Range Rover by the end of the day, I will sue you. I will drag you into court and I will bleed you dry. I will paint you as a senile, vindictive old man who is financially abusing his family. Do you want that legacy, Gus? Do you want the whole city to know you are a tyrant? I looked at this boy. This soft, arrogant boy who had never calloused his hands, who had never stayed awake at night wondering how to make payroll for 500 truckers. He thought he could threaten me in my own house. He thought he could use words he learned in a freshman business class to scare a man who had negotiated contracts with Teamsters and politicians. I stood up. I moved slowly, deliberately. I picked up my cane, not because I needed it, but because it was heavy, solid hickory. I walked around the desk until I was standing right in front of him. I am 6'2". Hunter is 5'10" on a good day. He had to look up at me. He took a small step back, his confidence faltering for a split second. You want to talk about the law, Hunter, I asked. My voice was low, like distant thunder. Let's talk about the law. You mentioned a verbal contract. A contract requires consideration. It requires an exchange of value. I give you money, you give me. What respect, loyalty, decency? You gave me none of that. You gave me insults. You gave me contempt. You broke the contract, son. Not me. I took a step closer. He smelled of expensive cologne and fear. And as for suing me, I continued, please do. My lawyers are bored. They would love to tear you apart. They would love to audit your finances in discovery. They would love to see where all that money I gave you actually went. Because we both know you are not making enough in that finance job to cover your gambling debts, are you? Hunter's face went pale. His eyes darted to the side. He didn't know I knew about the online poker. He didn't know I knew about the sports betting apps. He thought he was slick. But before you call your lawyer, I said, let's talk about something more immediate. You mentioned abuse. You mentioned control. You seem to think you are a victim here, so let me set you free. I walked over to the window and looked out at the driveway. You are standing in my house, Hunter. A house you do not pay for. You are wearing a suit I likely paid for. You drove here in a car that is leased in my name. You are a parasite. And I am done being the host. I turned back to him. His arrogance was cracking, replaced by a dawning realization that he had overplayed his hand. Get out, I said. What, he stammered. Get out of my house, I said, right now. Take your briefcase, take your empty threats, and get off my property before I call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. And Hunter, he froze his hand on the handle of his briefcase. The apartment, I said. The penthouse in Buckhead with the skyline view. The one where you and Tiana host your parties and laugh about the dumb old truck driver who pays the bills. Do you remember who signed the lease? Hunter blinked. He licked his lips nervously. I signed it, he said, his voice shaking. My name is on the lease. Yes, I said, smiling. A cold, hard smile. Your name is on the tenant line, but do you remember who signed as the guarantor? Do you remember who co-signed because your credit score was too low to qualify for a luxury unit? He stopped. The color drained from his face completely. He looked like a ghost. I did, I said. I am the guarantor. And do you know what happens when the guarantor withdraws their backing? Do you know what happens when the landlord realizes the tenant has no income and no credit? No, he whispered. You wouldn't. I already did, I said. I called the leasing office this morning. I formally withdrew my guarantee. And just so you know, the management company that owns that building, King Properties, it is a subsidiary of my holding company. I bought the building last year. I just never bothered to mention it. Hunter dropped the briefcase. It hit the floor with a thud. You are the landlord, he gasped. I am, I said, and you are 3 months behind on rent. I have been letting it slide because I wanted Tiana to be happy. But now I am a landlord running a business, and bad tenants get evicted. I checked my watch. It is 10 a.m. Hunter, the eviction notice is being typed up as we speak. You have 3 days to vacate, 3 days to pack your designer clothes and your expensive furniture and get out. If you are not gone by Wednesday, the sheriff will put your things on the curb. Hunter looked at me with pure horror. The arrogance was gone. The tough guy act was gone. He looked like a child who had lost his mother in a supermarket. "Gus, please," he begged. "We have nowhere to go. We can't move in 3 days. Tiana, she will die. She can't be homeless." "Then maybe she should have thought about that before she called me a wallet," I said. "Wallets close, Hunter, and houses get locked. Now pick up your bag and get out." He stared at me for one more second, searching for a trace of the gentle, generous man he had exploited for years. He found only stone. He bent down, grabbed his briefcase, and ran out of the room. I heard the front door slam. I heard his car tires squeal on the pavement as he sped away. I walked back to my desk and sat down. I took another sip of my iced tea. The ice had melted a little, but it was still cold. It tasted like victory. They thought the car was the tragedy. They thought the tuition was the crisis. They had no idea that the roof over their heads was about to disappear. I picked up the phone and dialed my property manager. "Post the notice," I said. "Do it today. Make sure it is taped to the front door where all the neighbors can see it." I hung up. I leaned back in my chair. The silence in the house was heavy, but it was not lonely. It was the silence of a battlefield after the first cannon has been fired. The war had begun, and I had just taken their high ground. But I knew them. I knew Vanessa. I knew they wouldn't give up. They would be desperate now. And desperate people do stupid things. I was counting on it. I sat there in the silence of my study, the ice in my glass having melted into a watery pool, listening to the grandfather clock in the hall tick away the seconds of their demise. I knew he would come back. A man like Hunter, a man built of hollow pride and cheap bravado, does not just run away. He regroups. He convinces himself that he is the smartest person in the room and that everyone else is just an obstacle to be outmaneuvered. He would go home, look at his lease, see his name typed there in bold letters, and tell himself that the old man was lying. He would tell himself that I was just a senile geriatric trying to scare him. Sure enough, 40 minutes later, the front door did not just open, it was practically kicked in. I heard the heavy, angry thud of shoes on the marble foyer. He did not come alone this time. I heard Vanessa's voice, shrill and panicked, echoing off the walls. "You cannot just kick them out, Gus." She was screaming. "It is illegal, it is inhumane." They burst into my study like a pair of stormtroopers. Hunter was waving a document in the air, his face twisted in a triumphant sneer. He looked like he had just discovered fire. He slapped the paper down on my desk right on top of my organized stack of correspondence. "Read it," Hunter barked. "Read it and weep, old man. I knew you were bluffing. I knew you were losing your mind. This is the lease. Look at it. Tenant, Hunter, Vance, not Augustus King. Me. I am the tenant. I have rights. You cannot evict a tenant without cause, and you certainly cannot do it because you are having a temper tantrum. You are senile, Gus. You are confusing your power fantasies with reality." He stepped back, crossing his arms, looking at Vanessa for approval. She nodded, her eyes blazing with indignation. "He is right, Gus," she said. "You are confusing things. You are getting mixed up. We should probably call Dr. Evans. This behavior is erratic. You are imagining you own things you do not own." I looked at the lease on the desk. It was a standard Georgia residential lease agreement. I knew it well. I had paid the lawyers who drafted the template for my company 20 years ago. I did not touch it. I just looked up at Hunter, then at Vanessa. I felt a strange sense of pity for them. They were like children playing with a loaded gun thinking it was a water pistol. "Is that all I asked?" "That is enough," Hunter shouted. "I am calling the police if you do not stop harassing us. I am the legal tenant. You are nothing but a third party." I opened the top drawer of my desk. The sound of the wood sliding on its tracks was the only sound in the room for a moment. I pulled out a single sheet of cream-colored paper. It was heavy stock. Formal. I placed it gently on top of his lease. "You are right, Hunter," I said softly. "Your name is on the lease. You are the tenant. But you seem to have forgotten how you got that apartment. Do you remember the credit check? Do you remember the leasing agent telling you that your debt-to-income ratio was too high? Do you remember who stepped in and signed the guarantee of lease?" Hunter frowned. The sneer faltered slightly. "You co-signed," he muttered. "So what?" That just means if I don't pay, you have to. I smiled. It was the smile of a wolf watching a lamb wander away from the herd. Not exactly, I said. A cosigner shares liability. A guarantor guarantees performance. And in the fine print of that lease clause 14 section B, it states that the guarantor has the right to withdraw their guarantee at any time if the tenant is in default. And when the guarantee is withdrawn, the lease is voidable immediately. I tapped the paper I had placed on the desk. This is the notice of withdrawal of guarantee, I said. I filed it at 9 a.m. this morning. Without my backing, you do not qualify to live in that building. You are financially naked, son. Hunter laughed. It was a nervous, shaky sound. Default, he scoffed. We are not in default. The rent is paid every month. You pay it. I leaned forward. This was the part I had been waiting for. This was the trap I had set 3 months ago, the moment Tiana had rolled her eyes when I asked her how her classes were going. I had sensed the disrespect growing like a cancer. I knew I needed leverage. Did I asked. Are you sure about that? Hunter looked at Vanessa. Vanessa looked at me. Of course you paid it, Vanessa said. It is on auto pay. It comes out of your account every first of the month. I shook my head slowly. No, Vanessa. I canceled the auto pay 3 months ago. The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Hunter's face drained of color, turning a sickly shade of gray. What he whispered. I canceled it, I repeated. I wanted to see if you would notice. I wanted to see if either of you ever bothered to check the accounts, or if you were so busy spending my money that you didn't even look at the statements. And guess what? You didn't. You were too busy buying shoes and planning parties. I pulled out another document. This one was bright pink, the color of emergency. This is a 3-day notice to pay or quit, I said. You are 3 months behind on rent, Hunter. That is $12,000 in arrears. In the state of Georgia, that is grounds for immediate eviction. But we didn't get any notices, Hunter stammered. They would have emailed me. They would have put letters on the door. I chuckled. They did email you, I said. But you used your old college email address on the application, didn't you? The one you never check because you think you are too big for it. And as for the letters on the door, I paused, letting the weight of the revelation hang in the air. I told the building manager to hold them, I said. I told him I would handle it personally, because as I mentioned before, I own the building. I watched the realization wash over him. It was brutal. He looked at Vanessa, begging her to fix it, begging her to tell him this was just a bad dream. You own the building, Vanessa whispered. Since when? Since last November, I said. The previous owner was a friend of mine. He wanted to liquidate his assets. I bought the entire complex. King Properties. You see the logo on the lobby floor every day. Tiana walks over it in her heels, but you never looked down. You never asked. You just assumed the world existed to serve you. I stood up and walked around the desk. I picked up the pink eviction notice and held it out to Hunter. You have 72 hours, I said. But since today is Sunday, the sheriff probably won't come until Wednesday morning. That gives you time to pack. I suggest you prioritize. Take the things you can sell. You are going to need the cash. Hunter did not take the paper. It fluttered from my hand and landed on his shiny leather shoes. He stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. You trapped us, he whispered. His voice was trembling with rage and fear. You set us up. You stopped paying the rent on purpose just so you could do this. You are a psychopath. I am a businessman, I corrected him, and I audit my investments. When an investment becomes a liability, I cut it loose. You and Tiana are liabilities. You consume resources and produce nothing but disrespect. Vanessa stepped forward. Her eyes were wild. She grabbed Hunter's arm, digging her nails into his suit jacket. You cannot do this to my daughter, she screamed. She is in the middle of her finals. She cannot be homeless. Where are they supposed to go? They have no money. You took their credit cards. You took their car. Now you are taking their home. You are trying to destroy them. I am trying to teach them, I said. I am trying to teach them that the world is cold when you do not have a jacket, and it is hard when you do not have a chair. They have lived in a fantasy world for 5 years. Welcome to reality. Hunter looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed with tears of frustration. He looked around the room, his gaze darting from the mahogany bookshelves to the Persian rug, and then it landed on Vanessa. A look of desperate calculation crossed his face. He realized he had lost the battle for the apartment. The law was against him. The money was against him. But he thought he had one card left to play. Fine, Hunter spat. Keep your damn apartment. Keep your building. We don't need it. He put his arm around Vanessa's shoulders, pulling her close. He looked at me with a sneer that was trying to be defiant but looked more like a cornered rat baring its teeth. We don't need your charity, Gus. We have family. If you kick us out, we will just move in here. My eyebrows shot up. Here, I asked. Yes, here, Hunter shouted. Vanessa lives here. This is her house too. It is marital property. She has a right to have guests. She has a right to have her family with her. You can't kick us out of your wife's house. Vanessa's face lit up. She latched onto the idea like a lifeline. Yes, she cried. That is right. They will move into the guest wing. We have plenty of room. Tiana can have her old room back, and Hunter can use the study down the hall. You cannot stop me, Gus. This is my home. Hunter smirked. He thought he had checkmated me. He thought he had found the loophole that would keep the gravy train rolling. He thought that by moving in, he could just burrow deeper into my life, eat my food, use my electricity, and make my life a living hell until I gave in. We will be here tomorrow morning, Hunter said, puffing out his chest. We will bring our things, and there is not a damn thing you can do about it. You want to play hardball, fine. We will live right under your nose. We will be in your face every single day. Let's see how much you enjoy your peace and quiet then. I looked at them. I looked at the smug satisfaction on Hunter's face. I looked at the vindictive triumph in Vanessa's eyes. They thought they had won. They thought they had forced my hand. I did not get angry. I did not shout. I felt that same cold calm wash over me again. They wanted to invade my sanctuary. They wanted to bring their toxicity into the one place I had left. They had no idea what they were walking into. I smiled. It was a small, tight smile. Is that so? I asked. You are going to move in here. Yes, Vanessa said, crossing her arms. Try and stop us. I looked at my watch. I won't stop you, I said. If you want to move in, move in. The doors are open. Hunter laughed. He picked up his lease from the desk and crumbled it into a ball, throwing it on the floor. See, he said to Vanessa. He folded. He knows he can't win. We will see you tomorrow, Gus. Have the maid prepare the rooms. They turned and walked out of the study, their heads held high, convinced they had just won the war. I heard them laughing in the hallway. I heard Vanessa telling Hunter that he was brilliant. I waited until I heard the front door close. Then I picked up the pink eviction notice from the floor where it had fallen. I smoothed it out and placed it in the file. They thought moving in here was the solution. They thought they could bully me in my own castle. They forgot that a castle is only comfortable if the king allows it to be. They forgot that I controlled the environment. I controlled the heat. I controlled the lights. I controlled the food. I picked up my phone and dialed my smart home security provider. Hello, this is Augustus King, I said. Account number 8842. I need to make some changes to my service. Yes, immediate changes. I want to restrict access to the guest wing. I want to set a lockout on the thermostat. And I want to change the Wi-Fi password. Yes, change it to something long, something complicated. I hung up. Then I called the kitchen staff. Mrs. Higgins, I said. Yes, it is Gus. I am giving everyone the week off. Yes, paid. Go home. Empty the fridge before you go. I want it bare. Nothing but water and maybe some crackers. Yes, lock the pantry. No, do not leave the key. I leaned back in my chair. They wanted to live with me. Fine. They were about to learn that living with Gus King when he is happy is a luxury. Living with Gus King when he is teaching you a lesson that is a survival course. I looked out the window at the sprawling lawn of my estate. Tomorrow, the invasion would begin, and tomorrow I would turn my home into a fortress of discomfort. They wanted a free ride. I was about to take them on a journey they would never forget. The eviction was just paperwork. This was going to be personal. The invasion began at 9 in the morning on Monday, just as Hunter had threatened. It was not a quiet affair. It was a spectacle. A convoy of 3 moving vans pulled up my driveway, followed by Hunter's leased sedan and Tiana's rental car, because even without my money, she refused to take the bus. I stood on the balcony of the master's suite, looking down at them, like a general watching a disorganized army trying to breach the castle walls. They were not bringing essentials. They were bringing excess. I saw designer suitcases, boxes of shoes, a 60-inch television, and even an espresso machine. They were moving in for the long haul. They were planning to occupy my home and wait me out. I walked down the grand staircase slowly, leaning on my cane, not because I needed it, but because the tapping sound it made on the marble annoyed Vanessa. She was standing in the foyer, directing the movers with the authority of a queen. "Put those boxes in the east wing," she shouted, pointing a manicured finger. "And be careful with that painting. It is worth more than your truck." She saw me descending and planted her feet firmly on the rug. She crossed her arms. Her chin went up. She was ready for a fight. She expected me to call the police. She expected me to block the door. She expected a scene. "Good morning, Gus," she said, her voice dripping with challenge. "As you can see, we are here. This is my home and my family is staying. Do not try to stop us. If you call the sheriff, I will show him our marriage license. I have rights." Hunter walked in behind her, carrying 2 garment bags over his shoulder. He smirked at me. It was the smirk of a man who thinks he has found a loophole in the system. "Move aside, old man," Hunter said. "We have heavy lifting to do. Try not to have a heart attack while we unpack." I did not block them. I did not raise my voice. I simply stepped to the side and gestured toward the hallway that led to the guest wing. "By all means," I said. "Welcome home." Vanessa blinked. The wind went out of her sails. She had braced herself for impact and found only open air. She looked at me with suspicion. "You aren't going to stop us?" she asked. "Why would I stop you?" I replied smoothly. "You are right, Vanessa. This is your home. You are my wife. Family should be together, especially in difficult times. Go ahead. Make yourselves comfortable." Hunter laughed. He dropped the garment bags on a bench. "See, Vanessa," he crowed. "I told you he would fold. He knows he is beaten. He is scared of being alone." They marched past me. Tiana followed, dragging a Louis Vuitton suitcase that looked heavy enough to contain gold bars. She didn't look at me. She just stared straight ahead, her nose in the air, treating me like the doorman at a hotel she wasn't paying for. I watched them parade down the hall toward the east wing. The guest suites were luxurious. They had their own living room, their own bathrooms, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. It was a 5-star accommodation, or at least it had been yesterday. I waited until the movers had left. I waited until I heard the doors of the guest wing close. Then I walked into my private study and locked the door. I sat down at my computer. I pulled up the smart home interface. It was a state-of-the-art system I had installed last year to control every aspect of the estate's environment. I navigated to the zone control panel. The house was divided into 4 climate zones. Zone 3 was the east wing. I looked at the current temperature. It was a pleasant 72 degrees. Outside, the Georgia sun was beating down and the humidity was climbing toward 90%. It was going to be a scorcher. I clicked on Zone 3. I selected System Off. Then I went to the Connectivity tab. I found the wireless access points for the guest wing. I clicked Disable. Then I went to the water heater settings. The estate had 3 tankless water heaters. Unit C supplied the guest wing. I clicked Deactivate. I leaned back in my chair. It was a subtle warfare. It was the gray zone. I wasn't kicking them out. I wasn't locking the doors. I was simply declining to provide the services they had grown accustomed to. If they wanted to live in my house against my will, they would live in the environment I chose. I spent the rest of the morning in my office handling business calls for my consulting firm. Around noon, I heard the first signs of distress. It started with a door opening and slamming shut. Then footsteps. Fast, angry footsteps. Hunter appeared at my office door. He was sweating. His shirt was unbuttoned at the top and his hair was damp. "The Wi-Fi is down," he said. "I am trying to trade crypto and I can't get a signal. And the air conditioning is broken. It is a sauna in there. Fix it." I looked up from my paperwork. I adjusted my glasses. "I am afraid I cannot do that." "Hunter," I said. "What do you mean you can't?" he demanded, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You own the house. Call the repair guy." I took off my glasses and set them on the desk. "You see, Hunter? I am currently conducting an austerity audit of the household expenses," I said, using the same corporate jargon he liked to throw around. "Energy costs are up. Inflation is high. I have decided to reduce the utility consumption in non-essential areas of the estate. The East Wing is considered a non-essential zone. Therefore, climate control and internet services have been suspended to balance the budget." He stared at me, his mouth agape. "You turned off the AC," he whispered. On purpose, it is 90 degrees outside, Gus. It is energy efficient, I corrected him. And as for the internet, well, Wi-Fi is a luxury, not a right. I am sure you have data on your phone. Oh, wait. I pay the phone bill too, don't I? I should probably look into suspending that line as well. Hunter's face turned purple. You are doing this to torture us, he shouted. I am doing this to save money, I said. I have to save money because I am supporting 3 able-bodied adults who refuse to work. Now, if you will excuse me, I have actual work to do. He stormed out, screaming for Vanessa. An hour later, the heat in the house was rising, but my study remained a cool, crisp 68 degrees. I decided it was time for lunch. I walked to the kitchen. My kitchen is a chef's dream. Stainless steel appliances, granite countertops, and a walk-in pantry stocked with goods from around the world. But today, it looked different. The countertops were bare. The fruit bowl was empty. The glass cookie jars were vacant. I walked over to the Sub-Zero refrigerator. It is a massive unit the size of a small car. It has a digital touchscreen on the door. Tiana was standing in front of it, pulling on the handle. She was pulling with both hands, bracing her foot against the bottom drawer. The door would not budge. It is stuck, she whined. Mom, the fridge is stuck. I am starving. I want a yogurt. Vanessa was sitting at the kitchen island, fanning herself with a magazine. Her silk blouse was sticking to her back. Gus, she said, seeing me enter. Fix the fridge and turn on the air. Tiana is faint from the heat. I walked past Tiana. I tapped the digital screen on the fridge door. A keypad appeared. I entered a 6-digit code. There was a soft beep and the mechanical lock disengaged. I opened the door. The light inside was cool and inviting, but the shelves were almost empty. Mrs. Higgins had followed my instructions perfectly. There were no gourmet cheeses. There were no organic berries. There was no smoked salmon. There was a pitcher of filtered water. There was a loaf of white bread. There was a jar of peanut butter. And there was my lunch, a pre-made container of grilled chicken and vegetables that I had prepared myself earlier that morning. I took out my container and the water pitcher. I closed the door. The lock engaged automatically with a heavy metallic click. Tiana lunged for the handle, but she was too late. It was locked again. Hey, she screamed. Open it back up. I want the water. I poured myself a glass of water and took a long, refreshing sip. I set the glass down and looked at them. The kitchen is closed, I said. What do you mean closed? Vanessa snapped, standing up. We are hungry. Where is the food? Where is Mrs. Higgins? Mrs. Higgins is on paid leave, I said. And the food? Well, this is my food. I bought it. I prepared it. Tiana stomped her foot. She looked like a toddler in a 26-year-old's body. Sweat was trickling down her neck, ruining her blowout. I am hungry, Gus, she yelled. Open the damn fridge. You have to feed us. It is illegal to starve people. I picked up my chicken. You are not starving, Tiana, I said. You are free to leave at any time. There is a grocery store 3 miles away. You can walk there. You can buy whatever you want. You can eat whatever you can afford. But I don't have any money, she shrieked. You cut my cards. You took my car. How am I supposed to buy food? I looked at her nails. They were still perfect. Maybe you can trade a manicure for a sandwich, I suggested. Or maybe your husband, the financier, can buy you lunch. Oh, wait, he has no income either. That seems like a logistical problem on your end. Vanessa slammed her hand on the counter. This is cruel, Gus, she hissed. You are enjoying this. You are a sadist. You are letting your family go hungry to prove a point. I am not letting you go hungry, I said. I am refusing to be your servant. There is a difference. For 5 years I put food on this table and you ate it without saying thank you. You complained about the brand of bottled water. You complained that the steak was too tough. You complained that the service was too slow. Well, the service has stopped. The restaurant is closed. I started to walk out of the kitchen carrying my lunch. Where are you going? Tiana cried, reaching out to grab my arm. Give me that chicken. I need protein. I pulled my arm away sharply. I looked her in the eye. The same eyes that had looked at me with such disdain in the restaurant. Do not touch me, I said. My voice was low and dangerous. I stepped back. You want to eat, Tiana? Then get a job. Get a paycheck. Buy your own groceries. Cook your own meals. Until then, do not look at my plate. I do not feed strangers. And right now, that is all you are to me. Strangers in my house. I walked out, leaving them in the hot, silent kitchen. I went to my study, locked the door, and ate my lunch in peace. I watched the security camera feed on my monitor. I saw them in the kitchen. Tiana was crying, trying to pry the pantry door open with a butter knife. Vanessa was on the phone, probably screaming at Harrison Wolf, who I knew would not take her call. Hunter was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands, looking defeated. They were hot, they were hungry, they were disconnected from the world, and for the first time in their lives they were feeling the consequences of their own uselessness. I finished my chicken. It was delicious. I cleaned the fork and put the container in my private trash can. The invasion had stalled. They had breached the walls, but they had forgotten to bring supplies. They were under siege, and the general of the castle was not in a negotiating mood. I checked the time. It was only 2 in the afternoon. The heat of the day was just beginning. By sunset, the east wing would be 95 degrees. I wondered how long their pride would last against the Georgia summer. I wondered how long it would take before they broke. I leaned back and closed my eyes. I had built a fortune moving goods across the world. I knew everything there was to know about supply chains, and I knew that when you cut the supply, the demand gets desperate. They were about to get very desperate, and I was going to enjoy watching them scramble. By 6 o'clock that evening, the temperature in the east wing had reached 92 degrees. I monitored it from my desktop dashboard with a grim satisfaction. The humidity in Atlanta is not a passive force. It is an aggressor. It crawls into your skin and sits heavy in your lungs. I knew that by now Tiana's blowout was ruined and Hunter was sweating through his linen shirts. I stayed in my study where the air was crisp and dry, reviewing quarterly reports for my logistics firm, but my mind was not on shipping containers. It was on the enemy combatants down the hall. I expected shouting. I expected Hunter to come back and bang on my door. I expected Tiana to throw a tantrum. But instead, silence fell over the house. It was a heavy, suspicious silence. The kind of quiet that happens in the jungle right before the predator strikes. Around 7:30 there was a soft knock on my door. It was gentle, almost rhythmic. It was not the angry pounding of earlier. "Come in," I said, minimizing the security window on my screen. The door opened and Vanessa walked in. She had changed clothes. She was no longer wearing the silk blouse she had arrived in. She was wearing a simple cotton house dress, one she used to wear years ago when we first started dating, before I had upgraded her wardrobe to Prada and Gucci. Her hair was pulled back. She looked tired. She looked humble. She was carrying a silver tray. On it was a porcelain teapot, a single cup, and a small plate of shortbread cookies. "Hey, Gus," she said softly. Her voice was low and sweet, dripping with a nostalgia that set my teeth on edge. "I know you are angry. I know things got out of hand today. I just wanted to bring you some tea. It is your favorite blend, Earl Grey with a drop of honey and lemon." She walked over to the desk and set the tray down. She did not look at me with defiance. She looked at me with big, watery eyes. She reached out and touched my hand, her fingers cool against my skin. "I am sorry about the car," she said. "And the apartment. We were just scared. We are a family, Gus. Families fight, but we shouldn't starve each other. Please just drink your tea. Relax. Let's talk in the morning when cooler heads prevail." I looked at her. I looked at the woman I had shared a bed with for 5 years. She was a good actress. I had to give her that. If I didn't know better, if I hadn't seen the hate in her eyes that morning, I might have believed her. I might have thought this was a genuine olive branch. "Thank you, Vanessa," I said. I kept my face neutral. "That is very thoughtful of you." She smiled. It was a fragile, hopeful thing. "Drink it while it is hot," she urged. "It will help you sleep. You look exhausted." She turned and walked out of the room, closing the door softly behind her. I stared at the teapot. Steam curled from the spout. It smelled like bergamot and lemon. It smelled like normalcy. But 30 years in the trucking business teaches you to trust your gut over your eyes. And my gut was screaming. Why now? Why the sudden shift from screaming harpy to dutiful wife? Why the specific mention of sleep? I picked up the cup. I brought it to my nose. I inhaled deeply. Underneath the citrus notes of the Earl Grey and the sweetness of the honey, there was something else. A faint chemical bitterness. It was subtle. Most people wouldn't have noticed it. But I take medication for my blood pressure. I know the smell of pharmaceuticals. It smelled like chalk and metal. I stood up. I walked over to the large potted ficus plant in the corner of the room. It was a hardy plant, been with me for 10 years. "I am sorry, old friend," I whispered. I poured the entire contents of the teapot into the soil. The liquid soaked in instantly. I poured the cup out too. Then I took a napkin and wiped the rim of the cup, leaving a faint stain so it looked used. I placed the empty cup back on the tray. They were not just trying to manipulate me anymore. They were trying to sedate me, and that meant they needed me unconscious for something. A man does not drug another man unless he plans to do something that requires a lack of witnesses. I needed to know what. I went to my bookshelf. Behind a row of leather-bound encyclopedias I never read, I had a small safe. I opened it and pulled out a box I had bought a year ago after a rash of break-ins in the neighborhood. It was a set of high-definition motion-activated spy cameras. They looked like standard USB wall chargers. I took one out of the box. I checked the battery. It was fully charged. I slipped the device into my pocket. I grabbed my empty water pitcher from the desk as a prop. I unlocked my door and stepped into the hallway. The house was quiet. I walked softly toward the kitchen. The kitchen was the command center. It was where they would congregate. It was the only room in the house with water since I had cut the supply to their bathrooms. I heard voices as I approached, low, urgent whispers. I stopped. I waited. Then I walked in, making sure my cane tapped loudly on the floor. They jumped. Vanessa was leaning against the counter. Hunter was sitting at the island. Tiana was pacing. They all looked at me with wide, guilty eyes. "Just getting some water," I said, my voice groggy. I slurred my words slightly, just enough to sell the performance. That tea hit the spot. "I am feeling very tired." Vanessa's eyes lit up. She exchanged a quick, sharp glance with Hunter. "Oh, good," she said. "You should rest, Gus. Go to bed. We will be quiet." I walked to the fridge, filled my pitcher, and then walked over to the outlet near the coffee maker. "I need to charge my phone later," I mumbled. "I am going to leave this block here." I plugged the spy camera into the wall. The tiny lens was facing directly at the island where they were gathered. It blended perfectly with the white tile backsplash. "Good night," I said. "Good night, Gus," they chorused. Their voices were too eager, too bright. I shuffled out of the room. I walked back to my study, locked the door, and immediately dropped the act. I moved with speed. I sat down at my computer and opened the secure app that connected to the camera feed. The video popped up on my screen in 4K resolution. The audio was crystal clear. I watched as Vanessa turned to Hunter. Her face was no longer sweet. It was hard, cold, and calculating. "Did he drink it?" Hunter asked. "The pot was empty," Vanessa said. "He drank the whole thing. That was 4 crushed Xanax and 2 Ambien, Hunter. That would knock out a horse. He will be out cold in 20 minutes. Hunter let out a breath he had been holding. He ran a hand through his hair. "Good," he said, "because we need to do this tonight. If he evicts us on Wednesday, we are dead. We need that signature." Tiana stopped pacing. She leaned on the counter. "Are you sure this is going to work?" she asked. "What if he wakes up?" "He won't wake up," Vanessa snapped. "And even if he does, he will be so groggy he won't know what he is signing. We tell him it is a delivery confirmation or an insurance update. He trusts me, or at least his subconscious does." "What is the document?" Tiana asked. Hunter reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a folded sheaf of papers. He smoothed them out on the island countertop. The camera zoomed in. I could read the bold header at the top of the page, "Durable Power of Attorney." I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. "This gives us control," Hunter explained, tapping the paper. "It gives us control over his bank accounts, his real estate, his medical decisions, everything. Once we have this, we don't need his permission. We can transfer the funds ourselves. We can sell the building. We can reinstate the lease. And if he fights it later," Tiana asked. Hunter laughed. It was a cruel sound. "Let him fight it. We will have the doctor testify. My friend Dave from college. He is a psychiatrist now. I already talked to him. If Gus acts erratic tomorrow, if he is slurring his words from the drugs, if he can't remember what happened tonight, Dave will sign an affidavit stating that Gus is showing signs of rapid onset dementia. We will say he signed the power of attorney during a lucid moment because he knew he was losing his mind." Vanessa nodded. She looked satisfied. "It is perfect," she said. "We put him in a facility. A nice one, of course. Somewhere quiet. We control the assets. We live here. We get our lives back. And he gets care. It is better for everyone." Better for everyone, I thought. Better for the vultures picking at the carcass. I watched them on the screen. My wife, my stepdaughter, my son-in-law. They were discussing my incarceration. They were discussing stripping me of my autonomy, my fortune, and my freedom. They were planning to drug me into a stupor and then lock me away in a home so they could spend my money on handbags and luxury cars. This was not just greed, this was evil. This was a conspiracy to commit fraud, assault, and kidnapping. I reached for my mouse. My hand was shaking not from fear but from a rage so pure it felt like white heat. I clicked the record button. I wanted every second of this. I wanted the audio. I wanted the video. I wanted the timestamps. I listened as they refined the plan. They would wait 1 hour, then they would come to my room. If I was asleep, they would use my thumbprint to unlock my phone and transfer cash immediately. Then they would wake me up just enough to put a pen in my hand. I downloaded the file. I saved it to my hard drive. Then I uploaded it to a secure cloud server. Then I emailed a copy to Harrison Wolf, my attorney. Then I emailed a copy to a private server I kept for sensitive business data. I sat back. I looked at the 3 people on the screen. They looked like normal people. They looked like a family having a late-night chat, but they were monsters. You want to play the sickness game? I whispered to the empty room. You want to make me a patient? You want to talk about dementia? Fine. I stood up. I went to the bathroom attached to my study. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked old. I looked tired, but my eyes were sharp. I opened the medicine cabinet. I took out a bottle of aspirin. I crushed 2 tablets into a fine powder. I dusted the powder onto my sleeve, onto my collar. I mussed my hair. I unbuttoned my shirt so it hung loose and sloppy. I took out my false teeth. I usually only took them out to sleep and placed them in a glass of water. Without my teeth, my face collapsed. I looked 10 years older. I looked frail. I looked exactly like the senile, helpless old man they wanted me to be. I walked back into the study. I turned off the lights. I unlocked the door. I sat in my chair, slumped over, my mouth hanging open slightly. I practiced my breathing. Slow, heavy, rattling. I was going to give them exactly what they wanted. I was going to let them come in. I was going to let them think they had won. I was going to let them put the pen in my hand. Because once they did that, once they crossed the threshold from planning to execution, there was no going back. It wasn't just talk anymore. It was a crime in progress. And I was the bait. I waited in the dark. I watched the clock. 10 minutes. 5 minutes. Then I heard the footsteps. Soft. Stealthy. They were coming. I closed my eyes. I let my head loll to the side. Showtime. Monday morning arrived with the deceptive calm of a hurricane eye. Hunter left the house at 7:30 wearing his best suit, the navy blue Zegna I had bought him for his birthday 2 years ago. He whistled as he walked to his car, which was actually a rental I assumed he had charged to a credit card he didn't know was canceled yet. He looked like a man who had just won the lottery. In his mind he had. He had the signature. He had the doctor's testimony. He believed he was hours away from liquidating my life. I waited until he was gone before I dressed. I chose a bespoke 3-piece suit, charcoal gray with a subtle pinstripe. I fastened my gold cufflinks, the ones shaped like lion heads. I picked up my cane, not the hickory one, but the ebony one with the silver handle. Today was not about brute force. It was about elegance. It was about wielding power with the precision of a surgeon. Thomas drove me to the financial district. We pulled up in front of the glass tower where Hunter worked. It was a mid-tier firm, the kind that handles retirement accounts for dentists and insurance payouts. Hunter was a junior analyst there, a glorified salesman who spent more time checking his fantasy football stats than analyzing markets. I did not go to the lobby reception. I used my key card. I had a key card because I was a limited partner in the firm's primary hedge fund. I took the private elevator to the top floor. When the doors opened, the receptionist, a woman who had worked there for 20 years, stood up immediately. "Mr. King," she said, her eyes widening. "We were not expecting you. Is Mr. Sterling in?" "He is," she said. "Let me just ring him." "Do not bother," I said, walking past her. "I know the way." I walked down the hallway lined with modern art. I could hear the hum of the trading floor below, the sound of money moving. I reached the double doors at the end of the hall and pushed them open. Robert Sterling, the CEO, was on the phone. He looked up surprised. He dropped the phone into its cradle. "Gus," he exclaimed, coming around his desk with his hand extended. "To what do I owe the pleasure? We haven't played around in months. How is the hip?" I shook his hand. My grip was firm. The hip is fine, Bob, I said, but we are not here to talk about golf. I am here to make a withdrawal. Robert laughed nervously. A withdrawal? You mean a distribution? We can certainly arrange that. How much are we talking? I sat down in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. I rested my hands on the silver handle of my cane. All of it, I said. Robert's smile froze. He blinked. All of it, Gus. You have $5 million in the Alpha Fund. That is our liquidity anchor. You can't just pull $5 million on a Monday morning. There are penalties. There are lockup periods. I waved my hand dismissively. I don't care about the penalties, Bob. Keep them. I want the principal out. Today. Wire it to my main account at Chase. Robert sat down slowly. He looked pale. Losing $5 million would not bankrupt the firm, but it would trigger a panic. It would ruin his quarter. It would make the board ask very uncomfortable questions. Why, Robert asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. Is it the market? Do you know something I don't? It is not the market, I said. It is a personnel issue. Personnel? Robert frowned. I leaned forward. I cannot in good conscience keep my money in a firm that employs a man who is actively trying to defraud me, I said. A man who refers to me, his father-in-law, and the source of his lifestyle as a stupid old black man who needs to be put down like a dog. Robert's jaw dropped. Who? He demanded. Who said that? Hunter Vance, I said. Your junior analyst. Robert looked like he was going to be sick. Hunter. But he is family. He is married to your daughter. Stepdaughter, I corrected. And yes, he is family, which makes his betrayal all the more toxic. He is currently bragging to anyone who will listen that he has tricked me into signing over my power of attorney. He is telling people I am senile. He is telling people that he is about to take control of the King estate, and he is doing it while sitting at a desk that my investment helps pay for. I pulled out my phone. I played a short audio clip from the recording I had made the night before. It was Hunter's voice, clear and arrogant. The old monkey doesn't even know what day it is. Once we lock him up, I'm buying a Porsche. It is reparations for having to deal with his smell. I stopped the recording. The silence in the office was absolute. Robert's face was a mask of horror and fury. He was a businessman, yes, but he was also a man who prided himself on the culture of his firm. And he knew as well as I did that keeping a liability like Hunter on the payroll after an accusation like this was professional suicide. I cannot have my capital managed by a racist grifter, Bob, I said softly. It is a matter of principle. Robert stood up. He buttoned his jacket. His face was hard. You don't have to withdraw your money, Gus, he said. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, give me 5 minutes, Robert said. He walked to his door and threw it open. All staff to the trading floor, he bellowed. Now I stood up and followed him. We walked out onto the balcony that overlooked the main floor. Dozens of analysts and traders were looking up confused. Among them, leaning against a cubicle wall with a coffee mug in his hand, was Hunter. He was laughing at something a colleague had said. He looked relaxed. He looked like he owned the place. When he saw me standing next to the CEO, his smile vanished. The coffee mug slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. Hunter Vance, Robert shouted. His voice echoed off the glass walls. Hunter flinched. He looked around, seeing every eye in the room turned to him. Yes, sir, Hunter stammered. Pack your things, Robert said. You are fired. Effective immediately. A gasp went through the room. Hunter's face turned bright red. What Hunter asked, his voice cracking. Why? What did I do? Robert pointed a finger at him. A finger of judgment. You violated our code of conduct, Robert said. We have a zero-tolerance policy for racism, fraud, and elder abuse. You are a disgrace to this firm. Hunter looked up at me. His eyes were wide with panic. He saw me standing there impassive, untouchable. He realized in that moment that the game was not only over, but that he had lost everything. Gus Hunter shouted, trying to appeal to the crowd. This is a misunderstanding. He is lying. He is senile. He doesn't know what he is doing. I did not speak. I did not have to. Robert spoke for me. Security, Robert yelled. Escort Mr. Vance from the building. If he resists, call the police. 2 large security guards in black uniforms materialized from the lobby. They marched toward Hunter. Hunter tried to back away. You can't do this, Hunter screamed. I have rights. I am going to be rich. I have a power of attorney. I own this old man." One of the guards grabbed Hunter's arm. Hunter swung at him, a wild, desperate flail. The guard didn't even blink. He swept Hunter's legs out from under him and pinned him to the carpet. Hunter howled. "Get him out of here," Robert said, disgust dripping from his voice. "Drag him out if you have to." And they did. They hauled him up by his armpits. His feet dragged on the floor, his expensive suit bunched up around his shoulders. He was kicking and screaming, spewing profanities, crying like a baby. I watched from the balcony. I looked down at him as he was dragged past his colleagues, past the people he had tried to impress, past the life he thought he deserved. He looked up at me one last time before they shoved him through the revolving doors. His eyes were filled with hate, yes, but also with a dawning, terrifying realization. He had underestimated the truck driver. The doors spun and he was gone, dumped onto the sidewalk. Robert turned to me. He looked shaken. "I apologize, Gus," he said. "I had no idea." "I know, Bob," I said. I patted his shoulder. "The money stays, but do me a favor. Make sure his severance package is 0. I walked back to the elevator. I descended to the lobby. I walked out the front doors. Hunter was there on the pavement. He was on his knees trying to gather the contents of his pockets that had spilled out. His phone, his wallet, and the crumpled, water-stained document he had forced me to sign. He looked up as I approached. He scrambled back, crab-walking on the concrete. You ruined me," he whispered. I stopped. I leaned on my cane. "I didn't ruin you, Hunter," I said. "I just exposed you. There is a difference." I nodded to Thomas, who brought the rolls around. "By the way," I said as I opened the car door, "I hope you read that document you signed last night, the one you are clutching so tightly, because my lawyers are going to be calling you about the repayment schedule." I got in the car. "What repayment?" Hunter yelled as the window rolled up. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer. I just watched him through the tinted glass, a small, broken man sitting on the sidewalk in a suit he couldn't pay for, holding a debt he couldn't service, realizing that the old man he had mocked was the one who had just signed his pink slip. The office was gone, the apartment was gone, the car was gone. Now it was time for the daughter. She was looking for a sugar daddy. I was going to help her find one. And it was going to be a match made in hell. By Tuesday evening, the atmosphere in the east wing of my estate had shifted from anger to a cold, desperate panic. Hunter had returned from the city not as a conqueror, but as a casualty. He walked with a limp, nursing a bruised ego and a security escort's rough handling. He did not tell Vanessa or Tiana the full truth, of course. He mumbled something about a restructuring, about being too good for the firm, about unfair politics. But Tiana knew. She smelled failure on him like cheap cologne. She looked at her husband, the man she had married for his potential, and saw a dead end. I watched it all from my study. I watched Tiana recoil when Hunter tried to hug her. I watched her retreat to the corner of the guest living room, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone screen. She was scrolling furiously, her thumb swiping left and right with the frantic energy of a drowning woman looking for a piece of driftwood. She was not looking for jobs. She was not looking for apartment listings. She was looking for an exit strategy. And for Tiana, an exit strategy always meant a man. I picked up my phone and called Vince, a private investigator I had kept on retainer for 20 years. He answered on the first ring. "Vince," I said, "I need you to run a bait operation. It is time to go fishing." I gave him the parameters. Create a profile on the most exclusive sugar daddy dating app in Atlanta. Make him young, handsome, and obscenely wealthy. Make him everything Hunter pretended to be, but wasn't. Call him Julian. Give him a background in tech or crypto, something vague but expensive, and park him right in Tiana's search radius. 20 minutes later, Tiana's phone pinged. I saw her face light up on the security monitor. She sat up straighter. She fixed her hair. She began typing. She was hooked. By Wednesday morning, she had a date. She told Vanessa she was going to a job interview. She told Hunter she was going to meet a study group friend. She lied with a fluidity that was almost impressive. She put on a red dress that I recognized from a charge on my credit card 3 months ago, $600 at Neiman Marcus. She did her makeup in the bathroom mirror, applying layers of confidence over her desperation. I sat on my porch and watched her leave. She had ordered a rideshare, paying for it with cash she had likely stolen from Hunter's wallet while he slept. She walked past me without a word, her head held high, the scent of her perfume lingering in the humid air. She looked like a predator on the prowl. She had no idea she was the prey. Vince had set up the meeting at Le Monde, a bistro downtown known for its privacy and its wine list. He had rented out a private booth in the back. He had also installed 3 high-definition microphones and 2 pinhole cameras in the flower arrangements. I went back to my study and opened my laptop. I pulled up the live feed. Then I did something crucial. I opened an anonymous messaging app. I entered 2 numbers, one for Hunter, or one for Vanessa. I typed a simple message. You might want to see what your family is doing right now. I pasted the link to the live stream. I hit send. Then I sat back and watched. On the screen, Tiana was seated across from Julian. Julian was actually an actor Vince used for sting operations, a handsome man in his 30s with a smooth voice and a Rolex that was a very convincing replica. He poured Tiana a glass of wine. She drank it greedily. You look stunning, Tiana, Julian said. It is hard to believe a woman like you is single. Tiana laughed. It was a tinkling, artificial sound. It is complicated, she said, leaning forward, showing off the neckline of the dress. I am technically married, but it is over. It has been over for a long time. Oh, Julian asked, raising an eyebrow. Why is that? He is useless, Tiana spat. The venom in her voice was startling. He told me he was a financier. He told me he was going to take care of me. But he is just a loser. He lost his job yesterday. Can you believe that he got fired for being incompetent? He has no ambition. He is weak. I need a man who can build an empire, not a man who cries because his boss yelled at him. I glanced at the other monitor, the one showing the security feed of the guest wing. Hunter was sitting on the sofa staring at his phone. I saw his face crumple. I saw him stand up, his hands shaking. He was watching. He was hearing his wife, the woman he had just sacrificed his career for, call him a loser to a stranger. Julian nodded sympathetically on the screen. That sounds terrible, he said. And your family? Do they support you? Tiana rolled her eyes. She took another gulp of wine. My family is a joke, she said. My mother is a gold digger who lost her touch. And my stepfather, God, don't get me started. What about him? Julian asked. He is this ancient, senile old man, Tiana said. Her voice dripped with disgust. He is disgusting. He walks around with this cane, drooling, forgetting where he is. He thinks he is some big shot because he used to drive trucks. But he is just a wallet with a pulse. I watched Vanessa on the security feed. She was in the guest bedroom. She was holding her phone, her hand over her mouth. She was watching her daughter destroy the narrative they had built together. She was watching Tiana burn the bridge while standing on it. He is dying anyway. Tiana continued, waving her hand dismissively. He has to be. Nobody lives that long with that much hate inside them. We are just waiting for him to kick the bucket so we can get the money. But honestly, I don't know if I can wait. I deserve better. I deserve to be spoiled now. I am in my prime. I shouldn't be playing nursemaid to a walking corpse and a broke husband. She reached across the table and touched Julian's hand. That is why I am here, she purred. I am looking for an upgrade. I am looking for someone who can give me the life I was meant for. Someone like you. Julian smiled. He pulled his hand back slowly. An upgrade, he repeated. Interesting choice of words. Yes, Tiana said, mistaking his withdrawal for playing hard to get. I can be very appreciative. I just need you to get me out of that house. Get me away from those losers. I looked at Hunter on the security feed. He wasn't crying anymore. He was shaking with rage. He threw his phone against the wall. It shattered. He started pacing the room, running his hands through his hair, screaming at the empty air. He had given up everything for her. He had committed fraud for her. He had humiliated himself for her, and she was selling him out for a glass of wine and a fake Rolex. Back at the restaurant, Julian checked his watch. You know, Tiana, he said, you are a very honest woman. That is rare. Thank you, she said, beaming. But I think there is someone who appreciates your honesty even more than I do, Julian said. He pulled out his own phone. He turned the screen toward her. It showed the viewer count on the live stream. 2 people were watching. Say hello to your husband, Tiana, Julian said. And your mother. They have been enjoying the show. Tiana froze. Her smile slid off her face like wet clay. She stared at the phone. She looked at Julian. What, she whispered. Who are you? I am just a guy doing a job, Julian said. He stood up. He threw a $20 bill on the table. For the wine. I don't think you will be ordering dinner. He walked away. Tiana sat there paralyzed. She looked at the hidden camera in the flowers. She realized with a dawning horror that the little red light had been blinking the entire time. She realized she had just confessed to being a gold digger, an adulterer, and a traitor broadcast live to the only two people in the world who were still on her side. She scrambled up from the table. She knocked over her wine glass. Red wine spilled across the white tablecloth, looking like a bloodstain. She ran out of the restaurant. I closed the laptop. I did not smile this time. There was no joy in seeing the depths of her rot. There was only a grim confirmation that I had made the right choice. She was not just a spoiled child. She was a mercenary. And mercenaries have no loyalty. I walked down the hall to the guest wing. I could hear the screaming before I even opened the door. It was the sound of a civil war. Hunter was throwing Tiana's clothes into the hallway. Shoes, dresses, bags. He was hurling them with a violence that spoke of a man who had nothing left to lose. "You are a snake," he was screaming. "A useless, parasitic snake. I lost my job for you. I signed that debt for you. And you call me a loser." Vanessa was trying to stop him, grabbing his arm, but he shoved her away. "Get off me," he yelled at her. "You are just like her. You raised her to be this way. You used me too." The front door opened. Tiana burst in, breathless. Her mascara smeared. She saw the pile of clothes in the hall. She saw Hunter's face. "Baby, wait," she cried. "It was a setup. He tricked me. I didn't mean it. I was just saying what he wanted to hear to get money for us." "Liar," Hunter roared. He picked up a lamp and threw it. It smashed against the wall next to Tiana's head. She screamed and ducked. I stood in the doorway, leaning on my cane. They didn't even see me at first. They were too busy tearing each other apart. It was like watching rats in a bucket when the water starts to rise. They turn on each other instantly. "Enough," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the noise. They all froze. They turned to look at me. Hunter was panting, his chest heaving. Tiana was sobbing on the floor. Vanessa was pale, pressing her hand to her chest. "This is my house," I said, "and I do not tolerate violence or trash in my hallway." I looked at Hunter. "You have a lot of energy for a man who is unemployed and $500,000 in debt," I said. "Perhaps you should save it. You are going to need it where you are going." "Where am I going?" Hunter spat. "To hell, I am already there." "Not yet," I said, "but you are close." I pointed to the door. "The police are on their way," I said. "I called them 5 minutes ago. Not for the domestic disturbance, although that is certainly cause enough, but because I found something in your room while you were out, Hunter. Or rather, the maid did when she was cleaning." Hunter's eyes widened. What he whispered. I did not answer. I just listened. In the distance, the wail of sirens began to rise, cutting through the humid afternoon air. They were getting closer. Hunter looked at Tiana. Tiana looked at Hunter. For a second, the hatred vanished, replaced by a shared primal fear. They knew what was in the room. They knew what they had hidden in the false bottom of the nightstand. "You didn't," Vanessa whispered. "Gus, tell me you didn't call the police on family." I looked at her. "I did not call the police on family, Vanessa," I said. "I called the police on criminals." The sirens were loud now. They were turning into the driveway. Blue lights flashed through the windows, painting the walls in strokes of panic. "Run," Hunter whispered to Tiana. But there was nowhere to run. The castle was locked down, and the gates were closed. The blue lights of the police cruisers strobed through the front windows, casting long, frantic shadows against the hallway walls. The wail of the sirens died abruptly, replaced by the heavy thud of car doors slamming and the crackle of police radios. I stood my ground in the doorway of the guest wing, leaning on my cane, watching the inevitable conclusion of the chaos I had orchestrated. Hunter was backed into a corner, breathing hard, his knuckles bruised from where he had punched the wall. Tiana was curled on the floor, sobbing into her hands, her mascara staining her cheeks like war paint. Vanessa was frozen, her hands pressed to her mouth, her eyes darting between her daughter and the front door. 3 officers burst into the foyer. They were not smiling. They moved with the tactical precision of men entering a volatile situation. One of them, a sergeant I recognized from the precinct charity dinners I sponsored, took the lead. He saw the broken lamp on the floor. He saw the clothes scattered like debris. He saw the terror on Tiana's face. "Police," the sergeant announced, his voice booming through the high ceilings. "Separate. Now, keep your hands where we can see them." Hunter raised his hands slowly. He tried to compose himself, tried to summon that slick financial salesman persona that had failed him so spectacularly all week. "Officers," Hunter said, his voice shaking only slightly. "This is just a misunderstanding. My wife and I were having a disagreement. It got a little heated. We are fine. We don't need any trouble. The sergeant ignored him. He gestured to his partner who moved to check on Tiana. "Ma'am, are you injured?" the officer asked. Tiana looked up. She saw the badge. She saw the gun on his hip. And for the first time in her life, she realized that her tears wouldn't fix the problem. She pointed a trembling finger at Hunter. "He threw a lamp at me," she screamed. "He is crazy. He lost his job and he is taking it out on me. I want him out of here. Arrest him." Hunter's eyes bulged. "You lying witch," he snarled, taking a step toward her. The sergeant stepped in between them, his hand resting on his holster. "Back off, son," the sergeant said. "Stand against the wall, now." Hunter complied, but his eyes were burning holes into Tiana. "She cheated on me," Hunter shouted to the room. "I gave up everything for her, and she cheated on me. That is why I am upset. It is a crime of passion." "It is domestic battery," the sergeant corrected him. "And in this county, we take that very seriously. Turn around, hands behind your back." Vanessa rushed forward then. She grabbed the sergeant's arm. "Please, officer," she begged. "He is my son-in-law. He is a good boy. He is just under a lot of stress. My husband, Mr. King here, he can vouch for him. Gus, tell them. Tell them Hunter is not a criminal." She looked at me. Her eyes were pleading. She expected me to step in. She expected me to use my influence, my name, my reputation to smooth this over. She thought that despite everything, I would still protect the family image. I looked at the sergeant. "Officer," I said calmly, "he is not a criminal because he yells. He is a criminal because of what is in the nightstand in the guest bedroom." The room went silent. Hunter froze as the handcuffs clicked onto his wrists. Tiana stopped crying. Vanessa dropped her hand from the sergeant's arm. "What did you say?" Hunter whispered. I turned to the sergeant. "When my housekeeper was cleaning the guest suite earlier today, she found a large stash of pharmaceuticals," I said. "Unlabeled bottles, high-potency sedatives. I believe they are illegal. I do not allow drugs in my home, Sergeant, especially not the kind used to incapacitate people." Hunter's face turned the color of old milk. He started to struggle against the cuffs. "That is a lie," he shouted. "He is setting me up." "Check the nightstand," I said simply. "Top drawer. False bottom." The sergeant nodded to the third officer, a rookie who looked eager to prove himself. The rookie disappeared into the bedroom. We waited in the hallway. The only sound was Hunter's ragged breathing and the soft, terrified whimpering of Tiana. A minute later, the rookie returned. He was holding an evidence bag. Inside were 3 large amber bottles filled to the brim with blue and white pills. There were no labels. "Found them," the rookie said. "Looks like a significant quantity, Sarge. Definitely not over the counter. And there is a notepad here with dosage calculations." The sergeant took the bag. He looked at Hunter. Then he looked at Tiana. "Is this your room, ma'am?" he asked. Tiana nodded dumbly. "Yes, but they aren't mine," she stammered. "They are his. He brought them." "They are in your room," the sergeant said, "in a shared space. That makes it constructive possession. And given the quantity, we aren't talking about personal use. We are talking about intent to distribute. Or worse." He pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, we have 2 in custody. Domestic disturbance upgraded to felony possession of controlled substances. Send a transport van." Tiana screamed. It was a high, piercing sound that shattered the last remnants of dignity in the house. "No, you can't arrest me. I didn't do anything. I am the victim, Mom. Do something, Gus. Tell them." The officer pulled Tiana to her feet. He spun her around. The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound was final, metallic, cold. "You have the right to remain silent," the officer recited. Tiana was thrashing, kicking out with her legs. "I am Tiana King," she yelled. "My stepfather owns this town. You will lose your badges. I watched them. I watched the girl who had called me a wallet. I watched the boy who had called me a monkey. They were being dragged out of my house not as royalty, but as common criminals. They were entering a system that did not care about their designer clothes or their degrees. Vanessa watched them too. She stood there paralyzed, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. She watched her daughter being led away, weeping and begging. She watched her son-in-law being shoved toward the door, his head hung low in defeat. Then she snapped. The reality of the situation hit her. Her family was being dismantled. Her legacy was being carted off in the back of a police van. She turned to me. Her face was a mask of pure desperation. She grabbed the lapels of my jacket. She shook me, or tried to. I was a rock. She was water. Gus, you have to stop this, she shrieked. They are taking them to jail. Do you understand? Jail. Tiana cannot go to jail. She is fragile. She will not survive. You have to fix this. Call the judge. You know Judge Miller. Call the mayor. Pay them off. Do whatever you do. Just get them out of those handcuffs. I gently removed her hands from my jacket. I brushed the fabric where she had touched me. I cannot interfere with a police investigation, Vanessa, I said. That would be obstruction of justice, and I am a law-abiding citizen. She fell to her knees. She actually fell to her knees on the marble floor, grabbing my hand, kissing my knuckles. It was a pathetic display, a performance of grief meant to manipulate the one man she thought she still controlled. Please, Gus, she sobbed. I am begging you. I will do anything. I will sign anything. Just bail them out. Pay the bail. Get them a lawyer. They have no money. You took it all. You are the only one who can save them. Please. For me. For your wife. I looked down at her. I looked at the tears streaming down her face. I wondered if she had cried like this when she was plotting to lock me away in a nursing home. I wondered if she had cried when she watched me drink that poisoned tea. Bail, I asked. Yes, she cried, looking up with a glimmer of hope. Just pay the bail. It will be set in the morning. It might be 50,000, maybe 100,000. That is pocket change for you, Gus. You keep that much in your safe. Just write the check. I pulled my hand away. I took a step back. I am afraid that is impossible, Vanessa, I said. Why? She screamed. Why is it impossible? You have millions. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app. I tapped on a transaction that had cleared just 30 minutes ago while they were busy destroying each other. I held the screen down so she could see it. It was a receipt, a wire transfer confirmation. Amount $3,500,000. Recipient Oceanic Yachts International. Memo payment in full. The Sovereign Lady. Vanessa stared at the screen. Her eyes crossed as she tried to make sense of the numbers. What is this? She whispered. I bought a boat, I said. A yacht, to be precise. It is a beautiful vessel. 80 feet. Teak decks. State-of-the-art navigation. I have always wanted to sail the Mediterranean. I decided today was the day to treat myself, since I am single now effectively. Vanessa looked up at me. Her face was gray. You spent $3 million on a boat today, I did, I said. And I moved the rest of my liquid cash into a series of irrevocable charitable trusts this afternoon. The paperwork is already filed. My personal accounts are currently quite lean. I don't have $50,000 for bail, Vanessa. I don't even have $5,000. I am cash poor. Asset rich, perhaps, but the assets are all tied up in things that benefit people who actually deserve it. She stared at me. The hope died in her eyes. It was replaced by a hollow, crushing realization. There was no safety net. There was no cavalry coming over the hill. So, they stay in jail, she whispered. I looked toward the door where the flashing blue lights were fading into the distance. They stay in jail, I said, until their arraignment. And then unless they can find a public defender who works miracles, they will stay there until trial. Because possession of that quantity of narcotics, that is a mandatory minimum sentence. And since I am the primary witness against them, well, I don't think the judge is going to be very lenient. Vanessa stood up slowly. She swayed on her feet. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. You are a monster, she said. Her voice was flat. Dead. I smiled. No, Vanessa, I said. I am a mirror. I am just reflecting the energy you brought into my house. You wanted to drug me. Now you deal with the drugs. You wanted to lock me up. Now you deal with the lockup. It is symmetry. It is poetic justice. I turned and walked toward the stairs. I needed to pack. I had a flight to catch in the morning to inspect my new purchase. Where are you going? She asked to my back. To bed, I said. I have a big day tomorrow. And you should probably get some rest too, Vanessa. The bus to the county jail leaves early from downtown. And since I canceled your Uber account, it is a long walk to the station. I climbed the stairs. I did not look back. I heard her collapse onto the bench in the foyer, wailing into the empty, echoing house. It was a sad sound. But it was not my sound. My sound was the hum of a yacht engine waiting for me in a harbor far, far away from here. The children were gone. The house was mine again. And Vanessa. She was about to find out that being the queen of an empty castle is a very lonely job, especially when the king has taken the treasury and left the building. The morning sun filtered through the silk drapes of the master bedroom, illuminating dust motes dancing in the silent, empty air. The house felt cavernous without the noise of deceit filling its halls. I stood by the window sipping my black coffee, watching the driveway. I was waiting for Vanessa to make her move. I knew she would not stay home and weep. Vanessa was a survivor, a cockroach in couture who would scurry for the nearest crack in the floorboards the moment the lights came on. She needed money. She needed a lawyer for her daughter and her son-in-law. And since I had frozen the family accounts and she had spent her meager paycheck on shoes, she had only one option left: the slush fund. I checked the GPS tracker on her phone, a precaution I had installed 3 years ago when she started taking suspiciously long trips to Miami. She was moving. She was in a taxi heading downtown. She was heading straight for the sleek, glass-fronted building that housed the Atlanta branch of Zurich Private Wealth. I smiled into my coffee cup. She thought she was so clever. She thought I didn't know about the account ending in 774. She thought I didn't notice the little siphoning she had been doing for 5 years. 5,000 here for interior design consultations that never happened. 3,000 there for charity gala tickets that were never purchased. 10,000 for household maintenance that was actually a direct deposit into her secret safety net. Over 5 years, she had embezzled nearly $200,000 from my operating accounts. She thought it was her escape hatch. She thought it was her nest egg hidden away in a Swiss bank subsidiary where I couldn't touch it. What she didn't realize is that when she opened that account, she used my corporate standing to bypass the minimum deposit requirements. She had listed herself as the account holder, yes, but she had listed the source of funds as King Logistics. And in the fine print of the banking agreement, the same fine print she never read, it stated that any account funded by corporate assets listed the corporation's majority shareholder, me, as the primary beneficial owner. She was just an authorized signatory, a secondary user. I pulled up the live feed from the bank's lobby. I was a premium client. I knew the branch manager, Henri, very well. I had called him an hour ago and told him to expect my wife. I told him to give her the VIP treatment. I wanted her to feel safe. I wanted her to feel powerful. Right before the floor dropped out, I watched on my tablet as Vanessa walked into the bank. She was wearing sunglasses indoors, trying to hide her swollen eyes. She clutched her Hermes bag to her chest like a shield. She marched up to the reception desk, her chin high, summoning every ounce of arrogance she had left. She demanded to see a manager immediately. She was led into a glass-walled office. Henri sat behind the desk. He stood up and shook her hand. He offered her water. She refused. I could see her lips moving fast, frantic. I switched to the audio feed Henri had graciously enabled on his desk phone for me. "I need to make a withdrawal, Henri," Vanessa said, her voice tight and trembling. "A full withdrawal. I want to close the account today. I need a cashier's check." Henri nodded slowly. He typed something into his computer. He frowned. He typed again. "Mrs. King," he said, his French accent thick and professional. "I am looking at the account ending in 774, the one labeled Vanessa Personal. Yes, that is the one she snapped. Just give me the money. I am in a hurry." Henri turned the monitor slightly so she couldn't see it yet. He clasped his hands on the desk. "I am afraid that is impossible, madame," he said. Vanessa froze. Her knuckles turned white on the straps of her bag. "Impossible," she whispered. "What do you mean, impossible? Is the system down?" "I don't care about penalties. I told you I need the money now." "It is not the system," Madame Henri said gently. "It is the balance." "What about the balance?" "There is over $200,000 in there. I checked the app yesterday." Henri shook his head. "There was $200,000 in there on Saturday morning," he corrected her. "But as of this morning, the balance is 0.00. Vanessa stood up so fast her chair tipped over backward. She slammed her hands onto the desk. "Zero," she shrieked. "That is a lie. Who took it? Was it hacked? I didn't authorize any transfers." "You did not." "No." Henri agreed. "But the primary account holder did." "Primary account holder!" Vanessa yelled. "I am the account holder. I opened it. It is my name on the checks. You are the authorized signatory," Madame Henri said, his voice remaining calm in the face of her hysteria. "But the account is linked to King Logistics. Mr. Augustus King is the beneficial owner. And Mr. King executed a wire transfer late Saturday night shortly after midnight. Vanessa's face went gray. She looked like she had been shot. She slumped against the desk, her legs giving out. "Gus," she wheezed. "Gus took the money." "He did not take it exactly," Henri said. "He transferred it, where she begged." "Where did he send it?" "Maybe I can get it back. It is a mistake. He is confused. He is old." Henri picked up a piece of paper from his printer. It was the transaction receipt. He slid it across the desk toward her. "It does not appear to be a mistake," Madame Henri said. "He transferred the entire sum, $212,450, to the United Negro College Fund. The memo line says, 'Scholarship in the name of Tiana King for students who actually study.'" Vanessa stared at the paper. Her eyes bulged. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The money she had stolen nickel by nickel, the money she had hoarded for 5 years, the money she was going to use to bail out her criminal daughter and save her own skin, was gone. It was gone to pay for the tuition of strangers. It was gone to do the good that Tiana had refused to do. She let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. It was the sound of a woman realizing she was standing on a trapdoor that had already opened. "He knew," she whispered. "He knew the whole time." Henri nodded sympathetically. "Mr. King is a very astute businessman, madame. He monitors all his assets. He told me he allowed the account to remain active as an experiment. He wanted to see how much you would take." "And I took it all," she moaned. Henri stood up. "Is there anything else I can help you with, madame? Perhaps validate your parking?" Vanessa looked up at him. Her eyes were wild, unfocused. The reality was crashing down on her. Her daughter was in jail. Her son-in-law was in jail. She was facing criminal charges for conspiracy. And she was broke. Completely, utterly broke. She didn't even have enough money to pay the taxi waiting outside. She started to laugh. It was a high, manic sound. She grabbed the receipt and crumpled it in her fist. "He cut me off," she giggled. "He really cut me off. He left me nothing. Not even the crumbs I stole." She turned and stumbled toward the door. She didn't pick up the chair she had knocked over. She didn't say goodbye. She walked out of the glass office like a zombie. I watched her on the camera as she entered the main lobby. Her walk was unsteady. She bumped into a pillar. She stopped in the center of the marble floor, surrounded by people in expensive suits conducting business. She looked around, dazed. Then her knees buckled. She didn't faint. She just gave up. She slid down to the cold floor, her expensive dress pooling around her, her Hermes bag spilling open, revealing tubes of lipstick and empty credit card holders. She put her head in her hands and wailed. It was a guttural, ugly sound that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Security guards rushed toward her, unsure if she was sick or crazy. I closed the laptop. I finished my coffee. It was cold now, but it still tasted good. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I just felt finished. The audit was complete. The liabilities had been purged. The balance sheet was clean. I stood up and picked up my cane. I had a flight to catch. The Sovereign Lady was waiting for me in Miami. The captain had emailed me this morning saying the weather was perfect for a maiden voyage. I walked to the front door of my empty mansion. I set the alarm. I locked the deadbolt. I walked down the steps to the Rolls-Royce. Thomas opened the door. "To the airport," Sir Thomas asked. "Yes, Thomas," I said, "and take the scenic route. I want to enjoy the view of a city that no longer holds any debts for me." As we drove away, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Harrison Wolfe. The DA just called it red. "They are denying bail for Hunter and Tiana, flight risk, and they are issuing a warrant for Vanessa for embezzlement and conspiracy. Do you want to make a statement?" I typed back a single word. "No." I put the phone in my pocket. I didn't need to make a statement. My silence was the loudest thing they had ever heard. They had spent 5 years listening to my money talk. Now they were going to have to listen to the sound of their own consequences. And that was a conversation I didn't need to be present for. The courtroom smelled of lemon polish and old lies. It had been 30 days since I boarded my yacht in Miami, 30 days of silence and sea air, but I had flown back for this. I had flown back to watch the final act of the play Vanessa had written for herself. She sat at the plaintiff's table dressed in a modest gray suit I had never seen before. She wore no jewelry. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She looked like a grieving widow, which was exactly the look her high-priced lawyer had told her to affect. She was grieving the death of her bank account. I sat on the other side, flanked by Harrison Wolfe. I wore a navy suit perfectly tailored. I did not look at her. I looked at the judge, a woman named Honorable Judge Sterling, who had a reputation for suffering no fools. Vanessa's lawyer stood up. His name was Arthur Pym. He was known as the Barracuda of Buckhead. He charged $1,000 an hour, which I assumed Vanessa was paying with a promise of future settlement money because I knew for a fact she didn't have a dime. Your Honor, Pym began, his voice booming. We are here today to rectify a gross injustice. My client, Vanessa King, has been the victim of systematic financial and emotional abuse. For 5 years, she served as the backbone of the King Empire. She managed the household. She advised Mr. King on business matters. She sacrificed her own career to support him. And how was she repaid? With infidelity, with cruelty, with a sudden vindictive lockout that left her destitute. I raised an eyebrow. Infidelity, that was a new one. Pym continued, pacing in front of the bench. We have evidence, Your Honor, that Mr. King was funneling millions of dollars into offshore accounts and purchasing luxury assets like a $3 million yacht while denying his wife basic necessities. We believe these funds were used to support a secret lifestyle. Furthermore, the prenuptial agreement she signed was executed under duress. She was coerced. Therefore, we are asking that the prenup be voided. We are asking for 50% of the marital assets, including the appreciation of King logistics during the marriage and permanent alimony of $20,000 a month. Vanessa dabbed at her dry eyes with a tissue. She sniffled loudly enough for the court reporter to hear. I felt a tap on my arm. It was Harrison. He slid a piece of paper toward me. It was a note. She is good at red, but we are better. I nodded. Pym sat down, looking satisfied. He thought he had painted a masterpiece. He thought he had turned the narrative around. Harrison stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He walked to the center of the room. He did not shout. He did not pace. Your Honor, Harrison said, we have heard a very moving story, but that is all it is. A story. We are not here to debate feelings. We are here to look at facts. And the fact is, Mr. King did not lock his wife out because of a midlife crisis. He did not cut her off because of a mistress. He cut her off because she tried to kill him. The courtroom went silent. The judge leaned forward. Vanessa stiffened in her chair. Kill him, Judge Sterling asked. That is a serious accusation, Counselor. It is, Harrison said. And we have proof. He gestured to the bailiff, who dimmed the lights. A large screen descended from the ceiling. Harrison connected his laptop. This video was recorded 1 month ago inside the marital home, Harrison said. It was recorded on a security system Mr. King installed after suspecting his wife was tampering with his food. The video played. It was grainy but clear. It showed the kitchen island. It showed Vanessa Hunter and Tiana. It showed the box of sleeping pills. It showed Vanessa crushing them. The audio filled the room. That was 4 crushed Xanax and 2 Ambien, Hunter. That would knock out a horse. He will be out cold in 20 minutes. Then Hunter's voice. Good. Because we need to do this tonight. We need that signature. Then Tiana. What if he wakes up? Then Vanessa again. He won't wake up, and even if he does, he will be so groggy he won't know what he is signing. The video continued. It showed them laughing. It showed them planning the doctor's visit. It showed them discussing how to commit me to a facility. When the video ended, the lights came back up. Vanessa was not crying anymore. She was pale, her hands gripping the table so hard her knuckles were white. Pym, her lawyer, looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. He hadn't seen this. She hadn't told him about this. Your Honor, Harrison said, this is conspiracy to commit fraud and assault. This woman was not a partner. She was a predator. She attempted to drug her husband to force him to sign over his assets. That voids any claim to equitable distribution. You cannot inherit from a man you tried to murder, and you certainly cannot claim alimony from him. Judge Sterling looked at Vanessa. Her eyes were cold. Mrs. King, do you have an explanation for this? Vanessa stood up. She was trembling. It is taken out of context, she shrieked. We were worried about him. He was sick. We needed to help him. Sit down, the judge snapped. Harrison wasn't done. He walked back to our table and picked up a thick file. There is one more thing, Your Honor. Harrison said. Mr. Pym mentioned emotional abuse. He mentioned that Mr. King isolated his wife and stepdaughter. He claimed that Mr. King did not respect the family bond. Specifically, Mrs. King has stated in her deposition that her daughter Tiana comes from a lineage of high society and that Mr. King was jealous of Tiana's biological father. She claimed Mr. King tried to erase Tiana's heritage. I looked at Vanessa. This was her favorite lie. The lie about the mysterious, wealthy diplomat father who had died tragically. The lie she used to make Tiana feel like a princess and me like a servant. Tiana believed it. She believed her father was a king. I stood up. "May I speak, Your Honor?" I asked. The judge nodded. "Proceed, Mr. King." I picked up the file. I walked over to the witness stand, but I didn't sit. I stood in the well of the court facing Vanessa. "You told Tiana her father was a diplomat," I said. "You told her he was a man of class. You told her he left her a trust fund that I stole. You used that lie to turn her against me. You used it to make her hate me." Vanessa glared at me. "He was a better man than you," she hissed. "He had style. He had grace." I opened the file. I pulled out a mugshot. It was old, grainy, black and white. It showed a man with a charming smile and dead eyes holding a slate with a number on it. "This is Marcus Johnson," I said, holding the photo up for the judge. "Also known as Slick Verify, also known as the Gentleman Bandit. He is not a diplomat, Vanessa. He is a con artist. He is currently serving 20 years in a federal penitentiary in Louisiana for wire fraud and identity theft. He scammed 3 widows out of their life savings before he met you." Vanessa gasped. Pim closed his eyes. I pulled out a stack of letters. They were written on yellow legal paper in pencil. "And he didn't die," I continued. "He writes to you every month. Or rather, he writes to me." I tossed the letters onto the defense table. They slid across the polished wood and landed in front of Vanessa. "Read them," I said. "Read what your man of class has to say." I picked one up and read it aloud. "Yogos rent is due on the commissary account. Send another 500 or I'm going to write to the girl and tell her who her daddy really is. Tell her how her mama helped me run the pigeon drop on that old lady in Memphis." The courtroom gasped. Even the bailiff looked shocked. "You see, Your Honor," I said, turning to the judge, "I have been paying him. For 5 years, $500 a month, not to keep him quiet for my sake, but for hers." I pointed at Vanessa. "I paid him so Tiana wouldn't know her father was a criminal. I paid him so she could keep her fantasy. I protected her from the truth because I thought it would break her heart. I let her insult me. I let her call me a wallet. I let her say I had no class, all while I was paying off the man who abandoned her to keep him from destroying her self-esteem." I looked at Vanessa. She was shrinking. She was melting into her chair. The lie she had built her life on, the lie she had used to feel superior to me, was gone. "I protected you, Vanessa," I said softly. "I covered your shame, and you repaid me with poison." I turned back to the judge. "I am done protecting them, Your Honor. I am cutting the cord. I am stopping the payments to the prison today. Let him write to Tiana. Let him tell her the truth. Maybe she needs to know where she really comes from. Maybe then she will understand that class isn't about what you wear. It is about what you do." Judge Sterling looked at the evidence. She looked at the video stills. She looked at the mugshot. She looked at the letters. She closed the folder. "Mr. Pym," the judge said. Her voice was icy. "I suggest you take your client into the hallway and explain to her what perjury is. I suggest you explain to her that if she does not withdraw her petition for alimony and agree to the terms of the prenuptial agreement immediately, I will refer this evidence to the district attorney for criminal prosecution by the end of the business day." Pym stood up. He was sweating. "Yes, Your Honor." "Immediately, Your Honor." He grabbed Vanessa by the arm. She was sobbing now, broken, ugly sobs. She tried to look at me, tried to find some mercy in my face, but I had turned away. I was looking at Harrison. I was looking at the exit. They dragged her out of the courtroom. I heard her wailing in the hallway. I heard her screaming that she was sorry, that she didn't mean it. It didn't matter. The truth was out. The foundation of lies had cracked and the house was coming down. Harrison closed his briefcase. "Well done, Gus," he said. I nodded. "Is it over?" I asked. "The divorce." "Yes," Harrison said. "She will sign. She has no choice." "But the fallout." "That is just beginning." I thought about Tiana. She was sitting in a jail cell waiting for a bail hearing. She didn't know yet. She didn't know her father wasn't a diplomat. She didn't know her mother was a fraud. She didn't know the only man who had ever truly taken care of her was the one she had spit on. "She is going to find out," I said. "Yes," Harrison said. "The letters. Do you want me to send them to her?" I thought about it. I thought about the girl who wanted a Birkin bag. I thought about the girl who called me a wallet. "Yes," I said. "Send them. Send them to the jail. Let her read them in her cell. Let her see what kind of blood runs in her veins. Maybe it will humble her, or maybe it will break her. Either way, it is not my problem anymore. I walked out of the courtroom. The air in the hallway was cooler, cleaner. I walked past the conference room where Pim was yelling at Vanessa. I didn't stop. I walked to the elevator. I had one more stop to make, one more loose end to tie up. And then I was going back to the sea. The air outside the county bail bonds office tasted like diesel fumes and desperation. It was a gray Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day where the sun refuses to shine as if it is embarrassed by what is happening down below. I pulled the Rolls-Royce up to the curb, but I did not tell Thomas to open the door. I wanted to look at her first. I wanted to see what 3 days in a holding cell does to a woman who thinks the world owes her a living. Tiana was sitting on a concrete bench. She was wearing the same red dress she had worn to the date with the fake sugar daddy, but it was no longer glamorous. It was wrinkled, stained, and smelled, I imagined, of institutional soap and fear. She was not wearing her heels. She was holding them in her lap, her bare feet resting on the dirty pavement. Around her left ankle, a thick black GPS monitor blinked with a steady, rhythmic green light. She was out on bail pending trial thanks to a public defender who had managed to argue that she was a first-time offender, though I knew the judge had only released her because the jails were overcrowded. She looked small. She looked broken. But as I watched her check her phone, I saw that familiar scowl, that set of the jaw that told me the arrogance was not gone. It was just bruised. She was probably texting Vanessa or maybe trying to log back into her social media to spin a story about how she was the victim of a grand conspiracy. She still believed in her own myth. She still believed she was a princess in exile. I opened the car door and stepped out. The sound of my cane hitting the pavement made her look up. Her eyes narrowed. She stood up, clutching her shoes to her chest like a weapon. "You," she hissed. Her voice was raspy. "You came to gloat. You came to see the show. Take a good look, Gus. I hope you are happy. You put your own daughter in a cage." I stopped a few feet away from her. I did not smile. There was no joy in this. It was a tragedy, but it was a necessary one. "I did not put you in a cage, Tiana," I said quietly. "You built the cage yourself when you filled your bedroom with illegal narcotics. I just locked the door." She stepped forward, her face twisting with hate. "You set us up," she screamed. "You ruined Hunter, you ruined Mom, and you ruined me. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because you are nothing. You are a jealous, bitter old man who couldn't stand that I loved my real father more than you. You hated him, didn't you? You hated that he was a diplomat. You hated that he had class. You hated that he came from a world you could never buy your way into." There it was. The ghost. The myth. The lie that Vanessa had fed her since she was a little girl to explain why her father wasn't there, why they were broke, why the world was unfair. She had built an entire identity around a man who didn't exist. She believed she was royalty because she believed he was a king. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. I felt the thick envelope there. It was heavy. It felt like carrying a brick. "Tiana," I said, "we need to talk about your father." "Do not talk about him," she yelled. "He would have killed you for this. If he hadn't died in that plane crash, he would be here right now, and he would destroy you. He loved me. He left me a fortune. Mom told me. You stole it. That is how you got rich, isn't it? You stole my inheritance." I pulled the envelope out. I held it in my hand. It was worn, battered. It contained 15 years of correspondence, 15 years of blackmail. "He didn't die in a plane crash," Tiana, I said. She froze. She looked at the envelope. What, she whispered. "He is not a diplomat." I continued. "He never was. His name is Marcus Johnson. He is a con man. He ran Ponzi schemes in Florida and Louisiana. He stole grandmothers' pensions. He stole from churches. And he is not dead. He is in Angola State Prison serving 20 years for wire fraud and identity theft." "Liar," she breathed. "You are a liar. Mom told me." "Mom lied," I said. "She lied to protect you. Or maybe she lied to protect herself from the shame of having fallen for a grifter, but she knew, and I knew." I took a step closer and held the envelope out to her. "These are not forged," I said. "You can check the postmarks. You can check the prisoner ID number. These are letters he wrote to your mother. And then when she couldn't pay him anymore, he wrote them to me." She stared at the bundle of yellowing paper. Her hands were shaking so hard she almost dropped her shoes. She didn't want to take it. She wanted to run. But the truth has a gravity to it. It pulls you in. "Take it," I said. "Read them." She dropped her shoes on the sidewalk. She reached out and took the envelope. She opened it. Her fingers fumbled with the flap. She pulled out the top letter. It was written in pencil on lined paper. The handwriting was jagged, aggressive. "Read the first one," I said. "It is dated 3 months ago, right around the time you were demanding the Birkin bag." Tiana looked down. Her lips moved silently as she read. I knew the words by heart. "Yo, Gus. Time to pay the rent. I need $500 for the commissary. Prices are going up in here. If I don't see the money by Friday, I am going to write to the girl. I am going to tell her who her daddy really is. I am going to tell her that her mama was the one who drove the getaway car in Memphis. Send the cash, old man, or the fairy tale is over." Tiana gasped, a sound of pure physical pain. She dropped the letter. She grabbed another one. "Tell the girl to send me a picture. Not because I care, but because I can trade it for cigarettes. Some of the guys in here like young stuff." She read another. "I heard she is getting married. Does the husband have money? Maybe he can take over the payments. I am tired of dealing with you, Gus. You are too cheap." She read another. And another. There were dozens of them. Not a single one asked how she was doing. Not a single one asked if she was happy. Not a single one mentioned love or pride or missing her. They were all about money. They were transactional. They were cold. They were the writings of a sociopath who saw his daughter not as a person, but as leverage. Tiana fell to her knees on the sidewalk. She was surrounded by the yellow sheets of paper scattered like dead leaves. She picked one up and crumpled it against her chest. She began to keen. It wasn't crying. It was a high, thin sound of a soul shattering. The image of the diplomat in the suit vanished. The image of the tragic hero vanished. In their place was an inmate number. In their place was a man who wanted to trade her photograph for cigarettes. Why, she sobbed, looking up at me. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears. "Why did you pay him? Why didn't you tell me?" I looked down at her. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't even feel pity. I just felt tired. "I paid him to keep him away from you," I said. "I paid him $500 a month for 5 years so you could keep your dream. I wanted you to believe you came from love. I wanted you to have dignity. I thought if you believed your father was a good man, you would try to be a good woman." I leaned on my cane, looking at the wreckage of her identity. "I let you insult me, Tiana. I let you call me names. I let you treat me like a servant. All while I was paying the ransom to keep your heart from breaking. I took the abuse so you wouldn't have to face the reality that your father didn't want you." She stared at me. Her eyes were wide, realizing for the first time the magnitude of what I had done. I wasn't the villain. I was the shield. I was the wall standing between her and the abyss. And she had spent 5 years trying to tear the wall down. "But you cut me off," she whispered. "You put me in jail." "Yes," I said, "because the lie didn't work. The myth of the diplomat didn't make you noble. It made you entitled. It made you cruel. You thought you were better than everyone else because of a bloodline that didn't exist. You needed to hit the ground, Tiana. You needed to feel the concrete. You needed to know that class isn't about who your father is. It is about how you treat people. And your father, the one in prison, he treats people like objects. And that is exactly what you did to me." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. I dropped it onto her lap. "Wipe your face," I said. She picked up the handkerchief. It was monogrammed silk, something I would have given her father if he had been the man she thought he was. "What happens now?" she asked. Her voice was small. She sounded like a child again. "Now you grow up," I said. "You face the charges. You get a job. You pay your own way. And you stop waiting for a man to save you, because the man you thought would save you is a criminal, and the man who actually saved you is the one you threw away." I turned to leave. "Gus," she called out. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. "I am sorry," she said. It was faint, barely audible over the traffic. I nodded. "I know," I said, "but sorry doesn't pay the rent." I walked back to the car. Thomas opened the door. I slid into the cool leather interior. Through the window I saw her still kneeling on the sidewalk, gathering the letters of a con man, pressing them to her chest, as if they could still offer some kind of warmth. She finally knew who she was. She was the daughter of a thief and a fraud, but she was also a woman who had been given a clean slate, even if it was a harsh one. I had stripped away the lies. I had stripped away the money. All that was left was Tiana. What she built from the rubble was up to her. I had done my job. I had taught the lesson. "Drive, Thomas," I said. The car pulled away, leaving her on the curb with the truth. It was a heavy burden, but it was the only thing I had left to give her. And unlike the money, the truth was something she couldn't spend. She had to live with it. 3 days after I watched Tiana crumble on the sidewalk outside the jail, I went back to where it all began. King Logistics, the trucking depot in South Atlanta that I had built from the dirt up. I had sold the majority stake years ago, but I kept an office on the second floor, a corner suite with glass walls that overlooked the loading docks. I liked to watch the trucks come in. I liked to see the commerce of the city moving crates and pallets, shifting like blood through veins. It reminded me of who I was before I became a wallet for ungrateful children. It reminded me that I was a man of iron and diesel, not just a signature on a check. It was 5 in the afternoon. The yard was busy. Forklifts were beeping, air brakes were hissing, and men in high-visibility vests were shouting over the roar of engines. I was sitting at my desk signing the final paperwork to transfer the deed of the Buckhead apartment complex to a property management firm. I was washing my hands of it. I wanted no physical reminders of the life I had subsidized for Hunter and Tiana. My secretary, a woman named Betty, who had been with me since the 80s, buzzed my intercom. Her voice was trembling. "Mr. King," she whispered, "there is a man here. He has a gun." Before I could answer, the door to my office exploded inward. It was Hunter. But it was not the Hunter I knew. The Hunter I knew wore tailored suits and smelled of sandalwood. This creature standing in my doorway was a ruin. He was wearing the same clothes he had been arrested in, now stained with sweat and dirt. He was unshaven, his eyes wild and bloodshot, vibrating with a manic chemical energy. He looked like a man who had not slept in 72 hours. He looked like a man who had stared into the abyss and decided to jump. In his right hand, shaking violently, was a silver pistol. It looked like a Saturday night special, something bought in an alley, not a gun shop. He waved it around the room, pointing it at the empty chairs at the window, and finally at me. "You think you won," he screamed. His voice cracked high and hysterical. "You think you can just throw me away like trash? I am Hunter Vance. I have a master's degree. I am the future. You are just the past." I did not stand up. I did not raise my hands. I placed my pen down on the desk, aligning it perfectly with the edge of the paper. I folded my hands on the mahogany surface. I looked at him over the rim of my glasses. I felt a strange cold calm settle over me. It was a feeling I had not felt since 1968 in a rice paddy in the Mekong Delta. The world slowed down. The noise of the depot faded. There was only the threat and the calculation of how to neutralize it. Hunter kicked the door shut behind him. He marched toward the desk, the gun bobbing up and down. "Get up," he ordered. "Get up, old man. We are leaving." I looked at him. "Where are we going, Hunter?" I asked. My voice was steady, bored even. "To the bank," he spat. "You are going to wire the money back. All of it. The $5 million you took from the firm, the money you stole from Vanessa. You are going to put it in an account I control. And then you are going to sign a confession saying you framed us, saying you planted the drugs." I sighed. I shook my head slowly. "There is no money, Hunter," I said. "I told Vanessa. It is in trust. It is gone. And even if I could access it, do you really think a wire transfer happens instantly? Do you think the bank is just going to hand you cash because you are waving a pistol? You truly know nothing about finance, do you?" "Shut up," he shrieked. He slammed the gun onto the desk, the barrel inches from my hand. "Don't you lecture me, you stupid arrogant." He used a word then, a word I had heard many times in my life, a word that used to be shouted at me from passing cars when I was a young man walking home from work, a word that was painted on the door of my first truck. It was a hateful, ugly word, a racial slur that carried centuries of violence behind it. He screamed it at me. He screamed that I was inferior. He screamed that I should have been grateful a white man married into my family. He screamed that everything I had stolen from people like him. The veneer of the polite Southern gentleman was gone. The mask of the loving son-in-law was gone. This was the real Hunter. This was the rot that had been festering beneath the surface for 5 years. He didn't just hate me because I cut him off. He hated me because I was a black man who had more power than him. He hated me because he had to beg me for scraps. I watched him rant. I watched the spittle fly from his lips. I watched the veins bulge in his neck. When he finally paused for breath, aiming the gun at my chest, I spoke. "Are you finished?" I asked. "No," he yelled. "Get up! I am kidnapping you, Gus. Do you understand I am taking you as collateral?" I stayed seated. I leaned back in my chair. I am 72 years old, Hunter, I said. I have bad knees, I have a bad hip. I don't walk fast. And I certainly don't walk anywhere at gunpoint, so if you want to shoot me, go ahead. Do it right here. Save us both the trip. He froze. He hadn't expected that. He expected begging. He expected fear. He didn't know how to handle a man who wasn't afraid to die. I will kill you, he threatened, but his voice wavered. I chuckled. It was a dark, dry sound. Son, I said, I was 17 years old when I landed in Vietnam. I have had men try to kill me who were professionals. Men who knew how to hold a rifle. Men who fought for something they believed in. You are a boy holding a toy you are afraid to use. You are shaking so hard you would probably miss from this distance and hit the window. I stood up. He flinched. He took a step back. Sit down, he screamed. No, I said. I walked around the desk. I did not use my cane. I stood tall. I walked straight toward the barrel of the gun. You call me names? I said, my voice rising, filling the room with the authority of a man who has commanded fleets. You use slurs because you are small. You think your skin makes you better than me. Look at you. You are a mess. You are a criminal. You are a failure. I built this building. I built this company. I built the life you lived. I bought the suit you ruined. I bought the food you ate. I am the reason you exist. Hunter, without me, you are nothing. I took another step. The gun was 3 feet from my chest. Pull the trigger, I challenged him. Show me what kind of man you are. Show me if you have the guts to take a life, or if you are just a coward who likes to beat women and steal from old people. He was trembling violently now. Tears were streaming down his face. The reality of what he was doing was crashing down on him. He wasn't a killer, he was a leech, and leeches don't fight. They just suck until they are flicked away. I hate you, he whimpered. I know, I said, but And that is why you will never be anything, because hate takes energy, Hunter, and you are lazy. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Betty had called the police. I could hear the heavy boots of the SWAT team hitting the stairs. Hunter heard them too. He looked at the door. He looked at the window. He looked at the gun. It is over, I said. Put it down, before they come in here and turn you into a statistic. He looked at me one last time. He saw no fear. He saw no pity. He saw only a wall of iron. He dropped the gun. It clattered to the floor. He fell to his knees, burying his face in his hands, sobbing. I kicked the gun away. I walked back to my desk and sat down. The door burst open again. Men in tactical gear swarmed the room. Rifles were pointed. Shouts of "Police!" and "Get down!" filled the air. They tackled Hunter. They slammed him into the carpet. They cuffed his hands behind his back. He didn't fight. He just cried, wailing like a child who scraped his knee. A captain entered the room. He saw me sitting calmly at my desk. "Mr. King, are you all right?" the captain asked. "I am fine, Captain," I said. "Just a disgruntled former employee." The captain looked at Hunter, who was being hauled to his feet. "We heard everything the captain said. We had listeners at the door. We heard the threats. We heard the slurs." "Good," I said. The captain leaned in close to Hunter's face. "Son, you are in a lot of trouble," the captain said. "Attempted kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon. And because of the language you used and the fact that you targeted this man specifically, we are adding federal hate crime charges. You are looking at 30 years, minimum." Hunter looked at me. His eyes were pleading now. "Gus, please," he begged. Tell them I wasn't going to do it. I was just crazy." "You were crazy when you thought you could break me," I said. Now you are just a prisoner." They dragged him out. I watched him go. I watched the last remnant of the parasitic infection that had plagued my life being scrubbed away. I looked around my office. It was quiet again. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the floor. I picked up my pen. I looked at the document I had been signing before the interruption. It was the deed transfer. I signed my name, Augustus King. The letters were bold and steady. My hand did not shake. I put the pen down. I adjusted my cufflinks. I was done here. The past was buried. The future was waiting. I stood up and walked out of the office. I walked past the yellow police tape. I walked past the shocked employees who were staring at me with awe. I walked out to the Rolls-Royce, Thomas was waiting. He looked worried. Sir Thomas asked, "I heard it is handled." "Thomas," I said, "it is all handled. Take me to the airport," I said. We drove away. I didn't look back at the warehouse. I didn't look back at the police cars. I closed my eyes and listened to the hum of the engine. Hunter Vance would spend the rest of his youth in a cage, surrounded by men who would not care about his finance degree or his designer suits. He would have a long time to think about the words he used. He would have a long time to think about the man he tried to intimidate. And me, I was going to sail. I was going to drink wine on the deck of my boat and watch the sun go down over the Mediterranean. I was going to live the life I had earned, a life without noise, a life without leeches, a life that was finally completely mine. The fall of the House of King did not happen with a bang, but with the scratching of a pen on a legal pad and the heavy metallic clank of a jail cell door. It had been 3 weeks since the incident at the warehouse, 3 weeks since Hunter had tried to play cowboy with a cheap pistol and lost his freedom. In that time, the district attorney had been very busy. They say that when it rains, it pours, but for Vanessa and her clan, it was a monsoon of indictments. I sat in my study reading the morning paper. The headline was small buried on page 6 of the Metro section, but it was there. Socialite indicted in poisoning plot. Below it was a picture of Vanessa, not the glamorous woman who hosted charity galas, but a mugshot. She looked gray. She looked hollow. The article detailed the charges. Embezzlement of corporate funds amounting to over $200,000. Conspiracy to commit assault. Attempted murder. The state had frozen everything. Her jewelry, her clothes, her personal accounts. It was all evidence now or collateral for the mountain of legal debt she was accruing. The prenuptial agreement I had forced her to sign 5 years ago was now the only thing protecting my empire from being dragged into her mess. She was destitute. She was facing 20 years, and she was alone. I folded the paper. I did not feel triumph. I felt a quiet, heavy resignation. It is a terrible thing to watch someone you once shared a bed with destroy themselves so completely. Later that morning, I asked Thomas to drive me downtown. I did not go to the jail immediately. First, I wanted to see the daughter. Tiana had been released on bail, but with conditions so strict they amounted to house arrest. However, she had debts to pay. The court had assigned her to a work release program to cover her court fees and the restitution for the damages she caused at the apartment complex. We pulled up to the side of the highway where a crew in orange vests was picking up trash. It was 90 degrees in the shade. The heat radiated off the asphalt in shimmering waves. I rolled down the window of the Rolls-Royce. I saw her. She was wearing an orange vest over a stained t-shirt and baggy work pants. Her hair, usually so perfectly styled, was pulled back in a messy knot, frizzy from the humidity. She was holding a trash picker and a heavy black bag. She was walking the ditch, spearing fast food wrappers and empty soda bottles. She stopped to wipe sweat from her forehead with the back of a dirty glove. She looked up and saw the car. She knew the car. It was the car that used to take her to the spa. She froze. Our eyes met across the lane of traffic. I expected her to scream. I expected her to throw the trash picker at me or flip me off, but she didn't. She just looked at me. Her shoulders slumped. There was no defiance left in her. The princess was gone. The diplomat's daughter was gone. There was just a tired young woman paying for her sins, one piece of garbage at a time. She looked down at the ground, then turned away and went back to work. She stabbed a discarded coffee cup. I rolled up the window. "Keep going, Thomas," I said. There was nothing to say to her. She was learning. It was a hard lesson, the hardest she would ever learn, but it was the only one that would stick. She was learning that dignity is not something you buy at a store. It is something you earn in the heat. We drove on to the Fulton County Jail. It is a bleak, imposing fortress of concrete and steel. It smells of misery and industrial cleaner. I checked my cane at the security desk. I walked through the metal detector. I was escorted to the visitation room. I sat on a metal stool bolted to the floor. In front of me was a thick pane of scratched plexiglass. I placed a manila envelope on the counter. A few minutes later, the door on the other side opened. A guard led Vanessa in. She was wearing a blue jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. Her hair was gray. I had never realized how much gray she had. She had always dyed it, touched it up every 2 weeks. Now the roots were showing a stark line of demarcation between the woman she pretended to be and the woman she was. Her face was gaunt without makeup to hide the lines of stress and age. She sat down. She didn't look at me at first. She looked at her hands, which were clasped together on the counter. They were shaking. "Hello, Vanessa," I said. She looked up. Her eyes were red. "You came," she whispered. Her voice was raspy, unused. "I didn't think you would come." "I had business to finish," I said. She let out a small, wet laugh. "Business? It is always business with you, Gus, even now." "It has to be," I said, "because personal feelings are messy. And you made things very messy, Vanessa." She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against the glass. "Gus, please," she said. "Get me out of here. I can't stay here. The women in here, they are animals. I am scared. I can't sleep. The food is inedible. I am losing my mind." "You tried to make me lose mine," I reminded her gently. "You tried to convince the world I was demented so you could lock me away in a home. Do you remember? You said it would be better for everyone?" She flinched. "I was desperate," she sobbed. "I was scared of being poor again. I didn't want to go back to nothing. I thought if I just took control I could save us." "You didn't want to save us, Vanessa," I said. "You wanted to save yourself. You were willing to sacrifice me to do it. You were willing to drug me. You were willing to steal from the company I built with my own hands. That is not fear, that is greed, and greed is a crime." She wiped her nose on her sleeve. "So what now?" she asked. "You came here to gloat. You came to see me in a jumpsuit so you could feel big." "No," I said. "I came to bring you this." I slid the documents out of the envelope. I pressed them against the glass so she could read the heading. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." She stared at the words. "Divorce," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "Irreconcilable differences. And adultery. And attempted murder." "It is quite a comprehensive list, Vanessa. My lawyers had a field day." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face again. "But I have nothing," she said. "I have no lawyer. I have no money. How can I sign this? I will lose everything." "You already lost everything," I said. "This is just the paperwork." I signaled the guard. He stepped forward, took the papers from me, and slid them through the slot to her side. He handed her a pen. "Sign it, Vanessa," I said. "Make it easy on yourself. If you sign now, I will not press for maximum sentencing on the civil fraud charges. I will let the criminal courts handle you, but I won't pursue the civil repayment beyond what the insurance covers. It is the last gift I will ever give you." She picked up the pen. Her hand hovered over the paper. "Gus," she said, looking up at me with big, tragic eyes. "Did you ever love me even for a minute? Or was I just another acquisition to you? Another trophy for your shelf?" I looked at her. I thought about the first time I met her at a charity auction 5 years ago. She had been wearing a blue dress. She had laughed at my jokes. She had made me feel young again. I had loved her. I had loved the idea of her. "I loved you, Vanessa," I said honestly. "I loved you enough to give you a life most people only dream of. I loved you enough to take in your daughter and treat her like my own. I loved you enough to ignore the red flags for 5 years because I wanted to believe you were good." I leaned closer to the glass. "But you didn't love me. You loved the lifestyle. You loved the safety. And the moment you thought the safety was threatened, you tried to eliminate me. That is not love. That is parasitism." She looked down at the paper. She sniffled. Then, with a trembling hand, she signed her name, Vanessa King. She pushed the papers back through the slot. I watched the guard stamp them. I watched him slide them back to me. I put them in the envelope. "Goodbye, Vanessa," I said. I stood up. "Wait," she called out. I paused. "What about Hunter?" she asked. "What is going to happen to him?" I buttoned my jacket. "Hunter is facing federal hate crime charges on top of the kidnapping attempt," I said. "He is going to federal prison. He will be an old man when he gets out. If he gets out." Vanessa put her head in her hands and began to weep. It was a sound of total defeat. I walked out of the visitation room. I collected my cane. I walked out into the bright, blinding sunshine of the parking lot. Thomas opened the door for me. "Are we done?" Sir Thomas asked. "We are done, Thomas," I said. "Take me home. I need to pack." We drove back to the estate. The house was quiet. The guest wing was empty, stripped of the invaders. I walked through the rooms. I looked at the empty spaces where their clutter used to be. It didn't feel empty. It felt clean. I went to my study. I opened the safe. I took out my passport. I took out the deed to the yacht. I was 72 years old. I had spent my life building things for other people. I had built a company. I had built a family, and they had tried to tear it all down. But I was still standing. The foundation was strong. I walked out to the porch and sat in my rocking chair. I looked out over the lawn. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. I thought about Tiana on the side of the road. I thought about Hunter in his cell. I thought about Vanessa in her jumpsuit. They had wanted everything without working for it. They had wanted the fruit without planting the tree. And now they were starving. I took a deep breath of the warm evening air. Tomorrow I would fly to Miami. I would board the Sovereign Lady. I would tell the captain to point the bow east toward the Atlantic, toward the horizon. I would drink my coffee on the deck and watch the sunrise over open water. I was alone. But for the first time in 5 years, I was not lonely. I was free, and that was worth every penny I had spent to get here. 6 months is a long time in the life of a man who has decided to stop waiting for permission to be happy. The estate in Buckhead, the one with the marble columns and the echoey hallways that Vanessa had loved so much, was finally empty. I sat on a packing crate in the center of the foyer, listening to the silence. It was not the heavy, oppressive silence of a house filled with secrets. It was the clean, hollow silence of a blank slate. I had sold it. I didn't haggle. I didn't hold out for the highest bidder. I sold it to a young couple with 3 noisy children and a golden retriever. I wanted the house to be messy. I wanted it to be loud. I wanted the ghosts of Vanessa's pretension to be chased away by the sound of kids running down the halls with muddy shoes. The check for the sale was sitting in my breast pocket, $4.5 million. A fortune to some, a rounding error to others, but to me it was blood money. It was the equity of 5 years of misery. I couldn't spend it. I couldn't buy another house with it. It felt tainted. So I gave it away. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the moving van was pulling away, carrying the few pieces of furniture I actually cared about: my leather chair, my mahogany desk, the portrait of my mother. Everything else, the silk drapes, the crystal chandeliers, the ridiculous white sofas Vanessa insisted no one sit on, I had included in the sale. Let the new owners spill juice on them. I walked out the front door and locked it for the last time. I tossed the keys to the real estate agent waiting by her car. "It is all yours," I said. She smiled, looking like she had just won the lottery on the commission. "Thank you, Mr. King. Are you sure you don't want to do a final walkthrough?" I shook my head. "I have walked through that house enough," I said. "I know where all the cracks are." I walked down the steps to where Thomas was waiting. But today we were not in the Rolls-Royce. I had sold that too. It was a symbol of the man Vanessa wanted me to be, the chauffeur-driven wallet. Today we were in a sleek black SUV, practical, powerful. "Take me to the university, Thomas," I said. We drove through the city. Atlanta was blooming, the dogwoods were out, the air was sweet. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of the city on my shoulders. I didn't worry about who was spending what. I didn't worry about appearances. We pulled up to the administration building of the historically black college where I had set up the meeting. Harrison Wolfe was waiting for me in the dean's office. He had a stack of papers on the conference table. Gus Harrison said, standing up, "You look rested." "I feel lighter." "Harrison," I said, "is it done?" Harrison nodded. He tapped the papers. "The Augustus King Opportunity Fund is officially established," he said. "The $4.5 million from the house sale has been deposited. The interest alone will provide full ride scholarships for 10 students a year indefinitely, tuition, housing, books, and a stipend for living expenses." I sat down and picked up a pen. "And the criteria?" I asked. "Just as you specified," Harrison said. "Students from single-parent homes, students who have worked a job while in high school, no legacy admissions, no connections, just grit." I smiled. I thought about Tiana. I thought about her demand for a Birkin bag. I thought about her complaints that school was too hard, that the professors were mean, that she needed a break. I signed the papers. The ink flowed smoothly. "This is better than a yacht," I said softly. Harrison chuckled. "You still have the yacht, Gus. It is waiting in Barcelona." "I know," I said, "but this is the legacy. This is the antidote to the poison." I finished signing. I shook hands with the dean, a woman who looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You are changing lives, Mr. King," she said. "I am just balancing the scales," I replied. I left the university. I had one more stop before the airport. It was a stop I had been debating for weeks, but now, with the house gone and the money given away, I felt brave. "Thomas," I said, "take me to the library on 10th Street." Thomas looked at me in the rearview mirror. He knew. Thomas always knew. "The library?" he asked. "Is Miss Clara still working there?" "She is," I said. I checked. We pulled up to the old brick building. I told Thomas to wait. I grabbed my cane and walked up the steps. The library smelled of old paper and quiet dignity. I walked past the rows of computers, past the students studying, to the reference desk in the back. She was there. Clara. She was 68 years old now. Her hair was silver braided into a crown around her head. She was wearing a cardigan and reading glasses on a chain. She was stamping books with a rhythmic, peaceful thud. I had known Clara 30 years ago. We had dated for a while before I made my first million, before I got busy building an empire. She was a teacher then. Kind, smart, soft-spoken. She had loved me when I had nothing. But I was ambitious. I wanted a trophy wife. I wanted someone who looked good on a magazine cover. I wanted a Vanessa. So I drifted away. I let the good thing go because I was chasing the shiny thing. I stood in front of her desk. I cleared my throat. Clara looked up. Her eyes, warm and brown, widened behind her glasses. She froze. "Gus," she whispered. "Augustus King." "Hello." "Clara," I said. I took off my hat. She stood up slowly. She walked around the desk. She looked at me, really looked at me, scanning my face for the years we had missed. "It has been a long time," she said. "I saw you in the papers, the scandal, the trial." "I am so sorry, Gus." I waved my hand. "Don't be," I said. It was a hard lesson, but I learned it. She smiled. It was the same smile I remembered. No guile, no calculation, just warmth. "You look good, Gus," she said. "You look free." "I am," I said. "I sold the house, Clara. I gave the money to the school. I am leaving today." "Leaving?" she asked. "Where?" "Everywhere," I said. "Europe, Asia, Africa. I am going to see the world I was too busy working to look at." She nodded. "That sounds wonderful. You deserve it." I hesitated. My heart was thumping in my chest like a teenage boy's. "I came to say goodbye," I said. "But I also came to say, I am sorry. For back then, I was a fool. I traded a diamond for a rhinestone because the rhinestone sparkled more." Clara laughed. It was a rich, throaty sound. "We were young, Gus. We all make mistakes. You made yours. I made mine." "Did you?" I asked. She shrugged. "I married a good man," she said. "He passed 5 years ago. We had a good life. Simple, but good." I nodded. I felt a pang of jealousy for the dead man who had earned her time. "I am glad," I said. There was a silence between us, a comfortable one. "So you are flying off into the sunset?" she asked. "I am," I said. "But I will be back, eventually." She looked at me. Her eyes crinkled at the corners. "If you do come back, Gus," she said, "you know where to find me. I am always here on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I make a very good peach cobbler." I smiled. A real smile. "I remember," I said. "It was the best I ever had." I reached out and took her hand. It was warm. It was real. "May I write to you?" I asked. From the road, I might see some things worth sharing. Clara squeezed my hand. "I would like that, Gus. I would like that very much." I let her hand go. I put my hat back on. "Goodbye, Clara." "Safe travels, Gus." I walked out of the library. I felt like I was floating. I hadn't promised her anything. She hadn't promised me anything. But the door was open, and for the first time in 5 years I was walking toward a door that wasn't a trap. I got back into the SUV. "To the airport, Thomas," I said. "And step on it. I don't want to miss the flight." We drove to the private airfield. My jet was waiting. It wasn't a massive corporate plane. It was a smaller, long-range Gulfstream. Efficient, fast. I walked up the stairs. The stewardess took my coat. I sat in the window seat. I watched Atlanta shrink beneath me as we took off. I watched the sprawling suburbs where Vanessa was currently sitting in a jail cell waiting for her arraignment. I watched the highways where Tiana was picking up trash. I watched the federal penitentiary where Hunter was learning that his finance degree didn't matter on the cell block. I felt a profound sense of detachment. They were small now, tiny specks in the rearview mirror of my life. They had tried to consume me. They had tried to eat me alive. But they had choked. I ordered a glass of champagne. Real champagne. Not the overpriced swill Tiana used to order to show off. I took a sip. I opened my journal. I uncapped my pen. I had a lot to write. I had a lot to see. I was Augustus King. I was 72 years old, and my life was just beginning. I looked out at the clouds. They were white and clean. The parasites were gone. The host had survived. And the host was going to have a hell of a good time. Sitting here on the teak deck of the Sovereign Lady, with the salt air filling my lungs and the endless blue of the Mediterranean stretching out before me, I finally understand the true value of silence. For 5 years, my life was filled with noise. The noise of demands, the noise of complaints, the noise of ungrateful people filling my home with their clutter and their chaos. I thought that noise was the sound of a family living. I thought that the constant friction was just the price a man pays for not being alone in his twilight years. I was wrong. That noise was the sound of termites chewing through the foundation of my life. It is strange how clarity comes to you when you stop writing checks. When the money stopped flowing, the fog lifted. I looked at Vanessa and I did not see a wife. I saw a bill collector. I looked at Tiana and I did not see a daughter. I saw a parasite. I looked at Hunter and I did not see a son. I saw a thief. It hurts to admit that. It hurts to admit that I, a man who built a logistics empire from a single truck, a man who can spot a bad contract from a mile away, was swindled by the oldest con in the book. I wanted to be loved so badly that I paid for the performance. But here in the quiet of the ocean, I have realized something profound. Money cannot buy you a family. You cannot purchase loyalty. You cannot finance respect. If you have to pay for it, then it is not love, it is a service. And like any service, if you stop paying, the provider stops caring. I spent millions trying to build a home with people who only saw me as a landlord. I tried to build a legacy with people who only wanted an inheritance. However, money does have a purpose. It cannot buy a family, but it can buy you the freedom to escape a fake one. It can buy you the distance you need to heal. It can buy you a boat that sails away from the wreckage. It can buy you the power to protect yourself when the people you trusted try to destroy you. I think about the scholarship fund I started. I think about the young men and women who will go to college next year because I sold that mausoleum of a house. I do not know their names yet. I may never meet them. But they are more my children than Tiana ever was. They will work hard. They will struggle. And when they succeed, it will be because someone gave them a hand up, not a handout. That is a legacy. That is immortality. I think about Clara back in Atlanta, stamping books in the quiet library. She does not care about my yacht. She does not care about my bank account. She cares about who I am. She remembers the Gus who drove the truck, not the Gus who signs the wire transfers. I will write to her tonight. I will tell her about the color of the water. I will tell her that for the first time in a long time, I am not tired. I am just resting. People often ask me if I regret what I did. Do I regret cutting them off? Do I regret putting them in jail? Do I regret destroying the lives they thought they were entitled to? No, I do not. Because I did not destroy their lives. I gave them back the lives they earned. I gave Vanessa the consequences of her greed. I gave Hunter the consequences of his arrogance. I gave Tiana the consequences of her entitlement. I returned them to the starting line. What they do from there is up to them. I am 72 years old. Some might say my life is nearing its end. But sitting here watching the sun dip below the horizon, I feel like I am just getting started. I have reclaimed my name. I have reclaimed my dignity. I have reclaimed my peace. I look at the empty chair beside me. It is not lonely. It is open. It is waiting for someone worthy to sit in it. Or it is waiting to remain empty because solitude is better than toxic company. I pick up my pen and open my journal. I have one last entry to make before I close the book on Atlanta forever. I want to leave a record, not for a judge, not for a jury, but for anyone out there who feels like they are being used. For anyone who feels like they have to buy their place in the world. I look into the camera of my mind addressing the millions of you who have followed this journey. I want you to hear this. I want you to understand this. They thought my silence was weakness, and my generosity was stupidity. But they forgot that the hand that feeds you is also the hand that can starve you. I spent a lifetime building my empire with honor, and I wasn't going to let arrogance and greed tear it down. The hardest lesson I had to teach them wasn't about money, it was about respect. You don't bite the hand that feeds you, and you certainly don't insult the man who holds the deed to your life. In the end, they lost everything, not because I took it, but because they never appreciated it. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.